Okay, I think we're live.
Okay.
But now I gotta wait for it to be live. Refresh. This is bad because I know we're live, but so it looks like we're not live, so now I'm kind of needing to learn. Why can't I see it? Okay, there we go. Now I do my intro.
Okay.
You haven't seen my intro.
No.
It's pretty cool.
Just go save him. I found Christ in my life, changed it, saved my soul, now say his name. Yeah, Jesus is my Novocaine. Yeah, Jesus is my Nova. Jesus go save.
Alright, that was my intro, right? Pretty cool. Welcome to the revolution. I'm your host, Jackson, and I'm here with my mentor. I forgot to ask how to introduce you.
Just however you want to do it.
My mentor,
Billy Bradford.
and you are a minister?
No, I'm just a guy, man.
Just a guy.
I'm just a guy following Christ.
Dang, I didn't even write that down. I'm terrible, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
He's a mentor,
Try to be.
someone I consider a friend,
Yes.
inspiration, and a follower of Jesus.
Yes. At the end of the day, that's all I want to be known as.
Mm-hmm.
As a man that followed God and followed God well.
Yes.
So.
Follow God well is a good way to
Yep.
say that. I like that a lot. So anyways, we got some topics.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say before we start?
No, go ahead. Just you lead it and I'll follow.
Alright. It's going to be the opposite. You'll lead and I follow.
Okay.
This is your interview. So, we're going to have, I mean, I know I got the topics and stuff, but I want you to feel free.
Yeah.
Whatever you have to say,
Yeah.
say it. My first one I have is the Hollywood revival.
Yeah. What is so you talking about the all the movies that are coming out with?
The Ordinary Angels. Have you seen that one?
No.
Neither have I, but I've heard it's really good. I
Yeah.
want to see it. Shows like The Chosen.
Okay.
A lot of podcasts, Hollywood-based podcasts, are faith-based podcasts right now. And it's crazy to see how everyone's starting to kind of wake up and find faith.
Yeah. So I think what we're seeing in the world in the United States is we're seeing God calling the United States, hey, you better wake up. You want to call yourself a
So I'm coming.
yeah. You want to call yourself a one nation under God, then you need to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're seeing. Maybe we can go back to the part in the scripture where it says, "Raise up a child in the word, they will not depart." So you're seeing people that they had a faith base. They understand what it is to be a Christ follower from childhood or from younger days.
Mm-hmm.
And that is starting to show back up. Oh, I've steered away from this, I've steered away from that. But the only thing that's been constant in my life is my faith.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother's faith, my mom's faith, my dad's faith, my grandfather's faith, whoever.
Faith has always been there.
Yeah, faith has always been the building block to life. And so you're seeing people that are producing movies that are starting to say, hey, maybe I should look back to my faith and the drugs, the alcohol, the fame, the world wasn't giving me what I necessarily needed.
Yeah.
But Jesus always has.
I like how you said about the United States being one nation under God. because we were founded as a Christian nation.
Yeah.
And over these past, I want to say, 4 or 5 years, we've lost a lot of our Christian values.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like God's like, hey, let's snap back into reality, you know. And you just talked about. I have this as a topic for another podcast, so I won't go too into it. But people growing up, and like, you know, people who were raised in Christian homes who have kind of veered away from that life, where now they're starting to realize like that's what life's about.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a reason why your parents followed Christ so closely. There's a reason why all these things happened, and so they're starting to look into it. You know, Bible sales are up right now, really high.
Well, it's always been the greatest selling book of all time.
People are buying a lot of Bibles right now.
Yeah, it has led book sales forever. So. Yeah, but
I just looked at 2024. I didn't look at forever. So
yeah, but you know the thing that one thing that you look at people, tragedy always brings people's faith out.
Yep. I heard one time, this is kind of a dark comedy.
Yeah.
But the Ocean Gate submarine, I think I might have said this before. Yeah. Ocean Gate submarine, everyone was praying. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, whenever 9/11 happened, I can tell you where I was at, what I was doing. I was at work. I'd come out of, I worked in a cold storage at the time in a big warehouse, and I had come out to warm up. I was cold. Mm-hmm. And
were you in New York? Or?
No. I was here in Springdale, or Lowell. But no, I remember coming out and getting a cup of coffee and just trying to warm my body up as everybody came out.
Because it was like a freezer, right?
Yeah. It was my room I was responsible for at the time ran at -10. It was the constant temperature in the room.
It's cold.
And so, but I remember
we don't get that.
but yeah, it was. But I remember coming out and standing there pouring a cup of coffee, and seeing the second plane hit the second tower. And just
like on TV.
On TV, yeah. Okay. On Fox News or CNN or whatever the broadcast was.
Not MSNBC.
But whatever Mr. Johnny, our custodian, the guy that cleaned our break rooms and all that stuff, whatever news outlet he decided to watch that day is what we were on.
Yeah.
And but I remember that hitting, and I remember everybody going, you got to pray.
Yeah.
And I was not living truly a faith-based life at that point. But I remember I was, oh gosh, it was 2001. I'm 51 now, so gosh.
I have a dark joke. I'm a 9/11 survivor.
Yeah.
I wasn't there.
Yeah. But I remember there was a gentleman that worked in our office upstairs, and his sister was actually worked in one of the towers.
Oh, really?
And I remember him trying to get a hold of her and trying to get a hold of his family. He was from a small town, he was actually from Huntsville. But his sister had called in sick that day. She had the flu.
There was a viral video on Instagram, and I have it saved in my whatever it's called, favorites or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it was about being late, running late for work. Oh. And it was like, this guy was sitting in a red light cussing because it wouldn't turn green. Oh. This guy was upset because it was his turn to go buy donuts. Yeah. This guy was mad because he was in a car accident. This guy was mad because he got pulled over. Yeah. Every single one of these people was going to the World Trade Center on the day of 9/11.
Yeah. But I remember that day that gentleman was trying to get hold of his sister so frantically. Mm-hmm. And I remember like I said, I wouldn't consider myself a Christ follower at that point. I knew who God was. I had been a Christ follower and had fallen away from God and chose not to be active in my faith. And
can I ask
yeah.
what caused that?
So I didn't want to be a preacher. I knew at a young age I was called. I felt like I was called to preach, and that's kind of goes along into my testimony of how I became a Christ follower again. But I didn't want to do anything for God because I knew that I was supposed to speak His word in some way somehow, and I didn't want to do that. And so I chose to be away from God. I chose that. God never chose me to be away from Him. I chose to be away.
I have a song where I said, I left Him, He never left me.
Yeah. Absolutely. A few years ago, I sat down and I started writing my testimony out, a true detailed account of my testimony, and I actually have it all typed up into an iPad that broke, and so so I can't retrieve it from an iPad.
It's not on your iCloud.
No, it was all in my notes on my iPad, and I hadn't saved anything to it, but to the iCloud anyway. But my charger cord actually broke up inside the iPad, so I can't retrieve that. So what I learned from that day it was pen and paper from then on to write notes. So
we just talked about that off camera, how I want to stop using my notes on my phone. Yeah,
because one day you're not going to be able to retrieve. You can always have the pen and paper, but you can't always have the electronics. So
yep.
But yeah, so that's I found countless times in my life where God actually spared me from horrible things, even death.
So last week I did my testimony, and I kind of graced over this part where, whenever I realized that God was real, every tiny detail in my life began to make sense. Why everything happened the way it happened, I was starting to understand. And it was like, it wasn't like in one day where it just flashed, It was like one day I'd be driving to work and I'd start thinking about something that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'd think of something that happened 11 years ago and how that led to that moment.
Yeah, they all link together.
God's presence in that moment.
Yeah.
Another thing I learned from you that I shared in that episode was, I believe it was your friend who had a very dark experience. And I don't want to get too detailed into it, but he had some things going on at home, and he had trauma from that. And one of your other friends told him, go back to that moment and find Jesus in that room.
Yeah, so that was the gentleman that mentors me, and I spend a lot of time with. Yeah, he came from a very abusive home life. Physically and mentally and verbally, and that was an exercise that a man that mentored him actually experienced. Gave him that experience and said, "I want you to take that moment that this bad thing was happening to you, and I want you to put yourself back in that moment for a second. Close your eyes really tight, and process relive that moment, rethink that moment, and then I want you to see where Jesus was in the room." And Jesus was in the room.
He's always in the room.
He's always in the room. But Jesus he will not supersede his man's will. Hard thing to understand. Hard thing to grasp.
So, we talked earlier about visualization, right? So whenever I was practicing this, I tried to visualize it and tried to see it. And what I saw was like, after because I didn't. It wasn't mine that I was visualizing. I was visualizing your friends or my brothers because it was a very similar story, and it was after my or his dad walked out of the room. Jesus was standing there with his hand out.
Yeah.
You know, like, come here.
Yeah.
And
that's what my friend talks about. After this event was all over, he felt the compassion and the love of Christ in the room, and he felt the comfort of Christ in the room. And this man he's turned into a great man of faith, a great leader of other men.
I've never met him, but he's my mentor's mentor.
Yeah.
So that says a lot about him.
I spent time with this man. Met this man about 4 years ago. I guess about 4 years ago. I think it was 2020 when I met him on a missions trip. It was we went to Vietnam on a trip and handed out wheelchairs with this organization from Springdale, and great trip. We didn't know this man before we left, but became great friends while we were there. And he's a guy that we connected a lot while we were there. But as we got home from that trip, good old COVID happened, and we were 6 months later we connected for lunch one day, and I've considered him my mentor since that day. Mm-hmm. And he told me there was more to life than just reading my Bible and praying. There was actually becoming a Matthew 28 guy, which is to go and make disciples. You know, go and spread the gospel, spread the good news.
I love that, because I'm sitting here looking at my notes right as you're talking, and I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go from this.
Yeah.
And I have discipleship.
Yeah.
What is discipleship for anyone who doesn't know, and what does it mean to you?
So discipleship it's finding somebody or asking somebody to follow you as you follow Christ. And it's a responsibility for you as a person to teach
To
that
lead
other
them
person
correctly.
Yes.
As well.
A great model of that is modeled to us, Paul and Timothy. 1st and 2nd Timothy. Come and follow. Paul tells Timothy, come and follow me as I follow Christ. And Timothy grabs a hold of that. And there's times where Paul tries to tell Timothy, hey, you wait here, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to minister. And Timothy's like, no, man, that's not the way this is going to work. I go where you go. And that's what it has to be with when you're discipling somebody, it's you go, we go. You come with me and you see what I do. As you and I meet, typically every Monday. Yeah. I have to bring material, and you have to bring your material. My material's not always right. Your material's not always right, but we come together and we discuss it, and we come to, this is what Christ is saying in this. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna bring that up as well, though. How I love having our Monday meetings and our Thursday meetings as well.
Yeah.
We meet on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
And the Thursday nights are just powerful. I feel like whenever me and you meet, it's two men kind of battling ideas,
mm-hmm.
seeing what we got out of the same text. But whenever we have 5 to 6 men doing that, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because not only is it like the one we just did today in Revelation, where you said, what was that last part you said?
About the being sweet.
Yes, the sin. And then how I didn't think of it like that.
Yeah.
But then whenever we have a group of guys, and then you tell me that, and I didn't think of it like that, and then Evan says something, and Dakota, Cole, everyone, that's powerful.
Yeah. That's the beauty of discipleship and beauty of meeting with like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that's in our Thursday night group, we're all at a different pace of life, a different pace of our Christianity, our relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
You want to get me fired up? Call it a religion. I'm not a religious person.
Let's talk. I want to talk about that. That's not on the notes, but
Yeah.
So why don't you like religion?
Because
I went over
rules.
this the other day
Yeah.
with my testimony, but
I don't like rules.
you don't like rules.
So let's take the Pharisees and Sadducees that didn't like Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just, and this is going to be probably if anybody watches this that's smarter than me, which if you're watching this you probably are. But so let's take their outlook on life. So God gave us 10 rules to live by, right? He said, okay, here's your 10 commandments. Mm-hmm. He wrote that on stone. I mean, that's pretty serious to write it in stone.
Yeah.
What'd man do? Man comes along and writes 613 other rules.
Mm-hmm.
365 of those are do not do's every day. The rest of them are, the rest of them are, do this, do that, do this, do that.
So
But
what you can do, or what you have to do, I would say,
have to do,
versus what you cannot do.
Yeah. Everything it becomes very ritualistic.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this. Why'd you do that? Well, because that's what I was told to do. Now there are times where that is necessary. Don't get me wrong.
But there's times where
There are times
that's terrible.
Yeah, but Jesus, God gave us 10. The Israel, the priest gave us, 613. I believe that number's correct. Maybe you're wrong on it. Anyway, somewhere in there, Jesus comes down and dumbs it down to 2.
Yeah.
Love the Lord God with all your heart, mind, soul, and body. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself.
And what I love about that is it's all 10 commandments, but they're simplified.
Yep, absolutely. So to have that relationship is to bring it down to, I do this because I serve an audience of one. 2 Timothy 3 talks about serving an audience of one. Mm-hmm. That's God. That's Jesus himself.
Yeah.
That's the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. The Trinity, the Godhead. My job is to introduce somebody else to that.
Okay.
And to
With the
introduce a
audience
religion.
of one, I'm sorry I keep throwing this off topic. With the audience of one, I've, a lot of my non-religious friends,
Mm-hmm.
or non-Christ friends,
Right.
that I have these debates with often ask me, is Jesus God?
That's truly a hard thing to get your mind wrapped around.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy thing to say yes, not an easy thing to say no, but it's a yes. He is.
Yes. And
because it's the Godhead.
I'm not as good as you at this, but I know the book, in the book of John, I want to say chapter 8, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am.
I am, yeah.
And I've heard a sermon before where he says Jesus was 100% man
Mm-hmm.
and 100% God. Not
Yes.
50% man and 50% God.
Right.
He was 100% man, but he was also 100% God.
So he was man, but he was also God man.
Mm-hmm.
So he was so he has to, for us to be able to put our faith in him, and for us to be able to say, God, you did this, or Jesus, you did this for me, we have to believe that he's God. And by believing that he is God and that he is, the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, to believe that and to understand who Jesus is, You have to accept his godship.
Mm-hmm.
Now he understands his role as the Son of God.
Jesus lived without sin.
Right.
No one that's just man in the history of the world has lived without sin.
Correct.
Starting with Adam.
Right. Adam had a chance.
Adam had a chance.
And Adam chose
Mm-hmm.
to sin. And you're going to have this great debate on where was Adam whenever when Eve was being tempted.
Mm-hmm.
Adam was right there.
Yeah, we've had this conversation.
Yeah.
Adam saw everything go down. And,
as the man that mentors me says, when he kind of breaks us down every year for a meeting I go to through his ministry every day or every Tuesday, what should Adam have done? He should have taken that snake or that serpent, ripped his head off, and said, "No, sugar baby, we ain't doing that today."
Mm-hmm.
And he should have chunked that snake as far as he could throw it, and stepped in. But
he should have done. Yeah, you said stepped in. I was
Yeah.
going to say he should have done that before he got to Eve.
Yeah.
Even.
As soon as the serpent began the temptation, Adam should have stepped forward. As men, we have to not be passive. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be angry. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be all these things, but you cannot be passive.
Mm-hmm.
That is you have to be, let Christ be the center of your home. Let him be your balance. Your wife is not your servant.
Yeah.
Your wife is your helpmate.
Your partner.
So Adam and Eve weren't married, so to speak, but when Eve was created, she was created as Adam's helpmate.
Mm-hmm.
But Adam was created as the head of the head of the home, or head of the everything. But you cannot be passive as a man. You have to be able to call sin sin.
You have to be assertive, yeah.
And you have to be able to call sin bad in your life. You have to call it to order.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come to Christ and be forgiven for those sins. And it's a daily thing. It's to live a righteous life, which what man is righteous? None but God. So
I sent a message to my friend Levi, and I said, let me see if I can find it. I was talking about Jesus being on the cross with the two men in that situation, and how one was mocking him and one entered paradise with him.
Yes.
He was a criminal. I said, no human is good except for Jesus. I'm probably one of the farthest away from good that there is, but I'm trying to get better. Not because I want to be rich, proud, or get into heaven, but because I want my Father in heaven to be proud of me. Kind of how you say every day, whenever I meet God, I don't want him to say, congratulations, you made it. I want him to say, well done, my faithful servant.
Yeah. That's the end of the day, that's the words I long to hear. Well done. Well done, you, my good and faithful servant. Come in and enjoy the,
Unless it comes to steak.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't you dare cook my steak well done. But, when, kind of maybe a bit of a side note, but when my mom passed away, 11, 12 years ago now, that was something that I told her, that I would spend the rest of my life on this planet doing what I could do to make her proud.
Yeah.
And then I'd meet her one day up there.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
that was a nice little
Yeah.
light in the mood.
Yeah. But, goofy kid. But, so that's something that I strive every day,
Mm-hmm.
is to live a life that my mom would be proud of. But But do I want my mom to be proud of me? Yes, I do. But for God to be proud of me, that's more than anything.
More importantly, yeah.
So.
And one thing you said that kind of gave me closure, because my mom's passed away, and that's something that I never really got closure for. And I talked about it on my last episode about how the last time I spoke to my mom was probably a 2-minute phone call.
Yeah.
And she was like complaining, and I was just like, hey, call me tomorrow, I'm busy. And the next day I got the phone call that my mom passed away. And I've always kind of struggled with that, but you said to me her last breath on earth was her first breath in heaven. And that kind of got me like, she's not with me in the physical anymore, but she still sees me. And I think about how my mom was, I've told you this before, my mom was the only person in my life who taught me about Jesus. And all I did was steer away from it. And I can just know, like, whenever she looks at me now, she's so proud of who I've become.
Look at it this way. It's kind of a cool way to look at it. She did everything she could do to steer you to Jesus. She left this planet. She left this, her time on earth was done. She had to go on. So the words didn't fall void. Everything she taught you, when you sit and you study the Word, when you think about the goodness of God, you think about who God is in your life, everything she taught you about God comes recognition, comes remembrance, not recognition, comes remembrance, and comes to you're like, man, my mama told me that.
Yeah, and that's something I think about a lot, actually, because it wasn't like my mom died and then I thought, oh, I need to get saved. My mom died in January of 2020. I got saved in late 2023, 3 years later. But I remember that first service at Journey where I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was saying something about, it was whenever he was about to ask if I wanted to be saved. And he said, if you don't have a relationship with Christ, and I remember my mom always telling me, if you don't have a relationship with Christ, you'll live in regret. And that was like back to how everything clicked together. And that's just beautiful to think about. It kind of gives you peace with that thought. And
how do people live without Jesus? I don't. What hope do you have?
None. And I can say that because I've lived the first 19, but really 20 years, because it was right around my birthday, of my life without Jesus. And I didn't have hope. I didn't have anything. I remember, I think I've told you this before, where my whole life I was looking for a purpose. I was looking for the reason that I was put on this earth, and what I was supposed to do with my life, and what the meaning of life was, until I found Jesus. And I got every single one of those questions answered.
Now what's your purpose? That your purpose was to find Christ. Yes, 100%. Now what's your purpose? Now what's your goal from now on?
I would say my purpose is to serve God and to lead other people to Him.
Yes.
Which is what I try to do with this podcast.
That's his whole thing. That's all about Matthew 28. Go and make disciples through all nations. And so one thing that I've taught a lot that I've learned a lot over the last couple of years through my mentors. It's all about teaching. It's all about discipling. It's all about taking a guy that's younger than you in the faith. I don't care how old you are. age-wise. It's all about how old how old you are in the faith, and let's roll with that. Let's learn together, and so that's your job as a Christ follower now is to tell somebody else the good news.
Absolutely.
What's the gospel? It's the good news.
And one thing I've been learning is gently. Don't shove it down their throats.
Yeah.
Don't force it on them. Don't make them feel dumb for believing different than you.
Yeah.
You're not trying to convince them that you're right. I want to say you're trying to convince them to give Jesus a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, there's when you meet somebody that's not following Christ, or you don't feel like they're following Christ, but in their eyes they are. They may, you can cover the great debate of alcohol.
Yeah, we've spoken about this.
Yeah. So I have friends that are, oh my gosh, if you have alcohol, you're damned to hell.
Mm-hmm. That's where you're going.
I don't believe that. Now I believe when you do it in excess, and that becomes your idol. You've become consumed by that.
Mm-hmm.
We got a problem. You've got a problem with that needs to be addressed. But I've had lots of great gospel conversations. With in moderation.
I want to play devil's advocate, which is a terrible role to play. But I want to ask you that same question with marijuana. Is that a sin? Whereas, say, it's the same exact scenario. You use it in moderation. It's not consuming you, and.
But is marijuana legal to
in
have?
Some cases.
Can you walk into a store and just buy some marijuana? I don't know, because
I know
that stuff doesn't interest me at all. It's never been part of my life.
Yeah.
Let me say it that way. It's never been a part of my life. I remember whenever I was a kid, I as a teenager, I tried it twice and was like, I'd rather have a beer or something, because it's not a felony.
I used to use it, daily. I was to the point where it did consume me, and my stepmom uses it.
Yeah.
And now she could sit right here where you are and smoke it, and I don't even have that temptation anymore. And it's more of fear. Mm-hmm. It's not because it's a sin and I'm gonna go to hell for it. It's more of like, I don't want to feel that. Yeah. I don't want to feel what that's gonna make me feel. And but anyways, to answer your question, so I grew up in Colorado, and I know in Colorado, if you were 21, same thing with alcohol, you could walk into the store and buy whatever you want.
Okay.
I know in Arkansas, if you're 18, you can get a medical card to where you can do the same thing.
Okay, but you gotta have a medical card.
Yeah.
So
for medicinal purposes.
Right. So for me, you've answered your own question right there, because you don't have a medical card.
Yes.
So therefore, that's where the Bible says, obey the law of the land.
Yeah.
So if it's illegal for you to have it, then...
So, the divided states of America.
Yeah.
I love that term. So it's like... Which I'm not even 21, so it's wrong for me either.
Right.
But... in Colorado, for someone who's 21, it's okay.
Yeah.
In Arkansas, it's not.
If you can do...
Because it's the law of the land. Okay.
If you can do whatever, and it's considered legal, you're of legal age, illegal, whatever, then if you can do it in moderation and it doesn't consume you, it doesn't own you, blaze up if you want. You're not going to hurt my feelings. But there again, it's not my job to be your judge.
Yep.
At the end of the day, you talk to God about that. And you say, Lord, is this something that is good with you? It's a good friend of mine. I have an email that I have saved on my phone that is the 81012 or 6810 principle. Sorry.
Yes.
6810 principle. Is it good for me? Can it consume me? Does it cause other people to stumble? So that's the thing you have to look at too. So I have a friend that I fish with a lot. He is a recovering alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to call my buddy and say, "Hey, bud, man, I'm going out. Let's go down here to, let's go to the bar and let's have a beer and let's talk about this or that." I'm not going to call that guy up and I'm not going to put him in that situation because alcohol has been a stumbling block to him. Mm. He's recently, last probably 2 or 3 years, quit smoking cigarettes.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say, "Hey, bud, let's go have us a beer and let's go have a cigar," because those two things have been an issue for him. Mm. So what I'm going to say is, "Hey, man, the fish are feeding on top. Let's go chase them. Let's go fishing. Or let's go have a cup of coffee." I'm not going to invite that guy to go have a drink because that is a stumbling block to him. So, in one aspect of that, as God asked Cain, "Where's your brother?" And Cain said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Well, yes, I actually am my brother's keeper. Mm-hmm. Because if you're having issues with, marijuana, drinking, sex, whatever, pornography, whatever that thing is, as a mentor, as that role that we have, disciple maker, that role, it's my job for you to say, "Hey, I'm having this issue. Okay, let's talk through this issue. Let's become accountable together for this." Pornography is a huge thing right now. People are struggling with pornography.
It's very bad. Real quick, I want to go on to that, but to circle back to marijuana, because my stepmom uses it. One thing I've been kind of battling with her is, first I want to say that I love the way you said, that's not for me to judge you. Yeah. That's for you to talk to God about. Yeah. Because that's kind of going to be my approach with this, because she coughs a lot. Whenever she coughs, I can just visualize her lungs being blacker than the fur on that zebra. Yeah. And so one thing me and my dad have been trying to get her to, not quit, but choose a different way. There's so many different ways you could do it. Edibles, eating it instead of smoking it, because a sin in itself is harming your temple, which is your body. And now you can say that with drinking, but excessive drinking will be bad for your liver.
You can say that for going to an all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet too, though.
Absolutely. But I feel like it's different with smoking, because in smoking anything, because it's kind of how we talked about with transitioning to pornography after this, how we talked about with that, you have to make that decision. Yeah. You have to sit there and think, I have to go get up and lock the door. Yeah. And same thing with smoking, I have to go get the lighter. I have to light this up. I have to take a drag, and then I have to inhale that.
Yeah. So it's kind of it's all premeditated.
Yeah.
It all comes down to being or premeditated act of I have to go and I have to meet up with somebody and buy some pot or buy some marijuana, you know, and then I have to go and you know, if you smoke it out of a bong or if you roll it in paper, I don't know, whatever. However, your choice of smoking it is, but you have to go.
You have to make that decision.
You have to get that vessel to do that, and so there's step by step there that you are being premeditated into doing this. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, pornography, it's the same deal. You know, it's like, you know, that's a world that you get sucked into that, you know. I heard an alcoholic say a few years ago that a gentleman that I was in a Bible study with a few years ago made a statement. He said, you know, the hardest thing about being an alcoholic is that my drug is on every corner, and it's legal for me to go and get my drug. Mm-hmm. Meth, marijuana, pills, whatever, narcotic, let's just say. You have to go and you have to find that guy. But pornography is a click away.
Yeah.
Alcohol is a mile and a half away from here.
And you got to think about, like, you know, say you do go into the liquor store and you're a recovering alcoholic. Mm-hmm. So you're thinking in your head, like, what if it's the salesperson or the cashier that I know that knows my struggle with this. Whereas with pornography, no one's gonna catch you. No one's gonna judge you for it because it's something.
Delete never means delete, though. Eventually, you're gonna get found out. Mm-hmm. On, you know, and the thing about if you were to walk into a liquor store and that guy is your friend, he knows your struggle with alcohol. As a friend, you have to do the hard thing and say, buddy, I'm not selling you this.
Yeah.
You get your hind parts out of here and you go home and you have a glass of sweet tea and you talk to Jesus.
Whereas with pornography, it's not that.
No.
And whether you think, so with one thing, a lot of people do is they spend money to message these girls. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they're messaging a man who's running that girl's account.
Absolutely.
And that man will, I guess, play their friend, right?
Yep.
They want to play as your friend.
Yep.
But they don't care what you're going through. They will take every last dime from you.
Yeah. And as a person condoning that behavior, by participating in that behavior, you are condoning it. You have to step back and look at yourself and say, do I condone slavery? Yeah. And by pursuing that, yes, you are condoning slavery. Mm-hmm. Because that is our world's vision, or our world's act of slavery today.
Whether it's her choice or not to do that.
Yep.
You know, 90% of the time, I want to say, that was manipulation that got her into that position.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a family member that was sucked into this world. Mm-hmm. And she was trapped in this world. And the guy that was running her seemed like a really good dude. I met him. I spent time with him. Mm-hmm. Seemed like a solid dude. Had no idea he was a piece of trash. Yeah. But that's something that I've had to talk to Jesus about some, and that's something that I deal with, I would say on a regular basis, dealing with that thought of, did I do enough to help my sister? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I did all I could do. She ended up taking her own life. They said, I don't know if that's true or not. I have my own thoughts on that. But as I live in this world, and I look at the world of pornography, I look at the sex industry. Mm-hmm. It's a horrible, horrible place. It's a place of slavery.
And another, it can ruin your home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
it's a home wrecker.
Men will watch their darkest fantasies that they don't tell other people about. They won't even tell their best friend about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then see it on that screen and think that that's like, that girl liked it.
Yeah.
So I can try that on my wife.
Yeah.
And I mean, just completely disrespect their wife.
Yeah.
In a trusted environment.
Yeah.
And
that girl you seen on screen did not enjoy that act.
Yeah.
She was made to do that.
She's an actor.
Yeah.
Actress. Whatever.
She is a slave to that act.
Yeah.
She is a slave to that industry. She is made to do those things. That is not fun for her. You think a 5-year-old child wants to have those things done to her or him? That's the thing. We seem to get lost in, this only happens to females. This happens to males too.
Yeah.
They're the men that are performing in these acts are slaves as well. They are made to do these things as well.
There's a and it's different for men.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy, I can't think of his name, but he was a male porn star.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but and he talked about getting into that industry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it sounded like a dream.
Yeah.
You know, it sounded like something he wanted to be a part of forever.
Yeah.
And once he got into that industry, it ruined it for him.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't want to be married anymore.
Yeah.
He kind of can't stand women.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a dark, disturbing world.
You know, it sounds like I can remember being a young kid and thinking that sounds like the greatest job ever.
Yeah.
Whereas that will destroy someone.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think that this is my own thoughts on this. Sex and music is where Satan is dabbling right now the most, because sex between a husband and a wife was supposed to be something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Supposed to be something intimate. It's supposed to be, you know, a loving process. And he can distort that and turn that ugly.
Yeah. And a lot of people get the belief from that God hates sex.
Yeah. No, God created sex.
God created sex to be intimate and a cherishable
Yeah.
moment with your wife.
Between one man, one woman.
I mean, if you want to talk about that, you know, that's the way you reproduce.
Yeah.
That is part of our thing in Genesis, you know,
Yeah.
repopulate
Yeah.
the earth. And it's been so twisted.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, the sex that's going around in the world right
Yeah.
now, God probably hates that.
Yeah.
But God doesn't hate sex.
Yeah. You look at, you know, go back to the Old Testament of Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, last couple weeks ago, and as in my daily Bible reading, my Bible recap I've been doing, reading the Bible in a year. If you're looking for a Bible process or program, I would highly recommend that. But
through the Holy Bible app.
Yeah, through the U version.
U version.
Yeah.
You can do
It's Bible recap.
Any translation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She typically uses the ESV version.
Okay.
It's seems to be a little easier version to live. But anyway, as we look at this sex thing, God does not enjoy perversion. He finds it disgusting. He finds it appalling to the point where he took a spot on the map and destroyed it, wiped it away with nothing but fire and brimstone. You know, Sodom and Gomorrah, whenever Abraham went, you know, and is getting his brother or getting Lot, and says, "Hey, man, you got to get out of here," or the angel of the Lord goes and says, or two of them go to Sodom. I'm kind of butchering this story, but they go to Sodom and it says, they come into the city and they're going to the middle of town to sleep. Mm-hmm. Customary thing to do, and Lot goes out to these men and says, "Hey, don't go there. Come into my house and sleep." And they're like, "No, we're going to the middle of town." "No, come to my house and sleep." Through persistence, the men go to his house, and as they are in the house, the men of the city come. The men of the city come to Lot's door and start beating on it, knocking on it, and saying, "Hey, send the men out that came to visit you. We want to have sex with them." Mm-hmm. And so God sees Lot as, still righteous. So he allows Lot to move and says, "You got to go right now." And so as they're leaving, actually Lot offers his daughter. And Lot, in the Bible it says, Lot says, "I'll give you my daughter that has never known a man," which means she's never had sex. Yeah. So Lot's willing to give his daughter, and these men would never have these other men. Mm-hmm. That is, that's perversion in God's eyes.
A part of, or thought of this story mm-hmm. that you've shared that I really think about a lot is how bad was Sodom and Gomorrah?
Yeah, my wife has said that for years.
Yeah. How bad was Sodom and Gomorrah that God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah? And if you look at America today, which it's not even just America, it's countries all over the world. Yeah. Canada is one of the worst right now.
Really? Okay.
With just sin culture.
Yeah.
Not even sexual sin, just sin culture in general. And God's not destroyed it. But I just had this thought while I was telling that. What role does Jesus play in that situation? Yeah. Because Sodom and Gomorrah was before Jesus came.
Right.
And died for our sins.
Yeah. So God will not supersede man's will. Mm-hmm. Jesus is there, and Jesus is saying, "I'm here. I'm standing at the door and I'm knocking." But he will not, impose his will upon anybody, because he is a perfect gentleman. And so he's waiting to be invited into your situation. That's the beauty of prayer. That's the beauty of salvation, is that he is waiting to be invited in to come to your salvation. Mm-hmm. For you to come to that loving Father, that man that died and gave it all for you. He is sitting there waiting, going, "Just ask and I'm here."
Yeah.
And as Christ followers, that's where we come into play, where we go and we tell this guy or that guy or this.
Share the gospel.
We share the gospel. Hey, there's a God waiting on you, and He's got some good news. And if you'll accept Him, then will life be easy? No. Will life be perfect? No, not at all.
I love that you brought that up, because this is something I haven't brought up before. I remember right before I got saved, I was scared to get saved, and it was because my life is going to be so boring.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a boring life. Boy, was I wrong. So one thing about me is I like conspiracy theory. Yeah. So, I find it interesting, just the spiritual warfare mm-hmm. that I battle on the daily basis. Yeah. That's something that'll keep me entertained all day, every day. But on top of that, the scripture itself is I was telling Levi how cool Jesus was.
Yeah.
Not like because he was a cool guy, he was a nice guy. Simply because of the fact, like, he told a storm to be still and it stopped. Just this last weekend I was with him and I told him about Mary Magdalene looking in the tomb, crying, they stole my Lord's body.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, Mary, from behind. He's standing there behind her, alive, well. And the Gen Z Bible told us out of that, like, Jesus is top G.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the stories in the Bible, King David, before King David and King Saul going back and forth, the story of Lazarus, I mean, just to think that God sent his son, John 3:16, God sent his one and only begotten son to die for my sins, your sins, which one thing you said, I'm going off the rails, but you've always said that if you were the only person in the world, God would have done everything the same way. And I mean, just to think that he sent his son to die for my sins, and then he rose 3 days later.
Yeah. He sent his son, but Jesus had to say yes.
Yeah. And
Jesus had to say, I will go.
Growing up, I've heard that my whole life.
Yeah.
My mom was super big on Christianity. Growing up, I glossed over that. And I thought, yeah, okay. But I mean, if you actually sit there and think about the situation, think about, was it John who went with him to the cross?
Yeah, John followed him.
John followed him to the cross. And I mean, think about being John in that situation. The Passion of the Christ plays it perfectly, where it's probably the worst scene in the entire movie, but it's one of my favorite scenes, where he's tied up getting beaten with all the things. And I say it's my favorite scene because it shows very descriptively what he endured for me, for you, for you, what he endured for the world. And I'm sure you've heard this sermon before. There was a guy, it's on YouTube, if me or you, which I'm not trying to say this in a bad way at all, but if I was Jesus, which I'm not blaspheming, and I was in that situation, and I was carrying the cross, I probably would have thrown it to the ground and said, you know what, I can't do this. I've done so much for you, and you just continue to sin, you continue to live horrible lives, and most of you don't even believe me. I'm not going to do this for you. I'm done.
Look at Peter. Take Peter there, so Peter was at the Last Supper. Judas does what he does, and Peter tells him,
I'll never betray you.
I'll never betray you. Almost in the next breath, Peter's betrayed him 3 times. He denies him 3 times. Lord, I won't deny you. I won't deny you.
And that goes back to how cool Jesus is, because Jesus looks him in the face before that and says, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And then he denied him 3 times. And then the rooster crowed, and he felt ashamed. He was like...
But what did Peter do after? What did Peter do after?
I don't know.
He got up. He got back up on his... spiritually got himself back up and preached.
So that's what I was gonna go. That's where I was gonna go with that. Was what did that do to Peter? Where like Because I can imagine he was denying him, and he was like thinking nothing of it. You know, he was trying to survive. He was like, "I'm not doing like he'll forgive me. He'll be all right." Then he heard that rooster crow, and thought, "My God, you know, my Lord, like you truly know everything."
Yeah.
And in my very first episode, I talked about that, where like, I mean, let's go back to pornography. I can't talk. Pornography. You know, you think you can get away with it because no one sees it, but God sees everything. And I mean, God, like, that's something like whenever I battle temptation with any sin, you know, I sit there and think, how I know God can see me, what I'm about to do.
Yep.
He's upset at me already for having the thought. And if I follow through, that's kind of me saying, I don't care if God's upset with me.
Yeah.
Which, like I said earlier, you know, I want to make my Father proud.
Yeah. So you have to every day look at life, and you know, and Joshua talks about, choose you this day whom will you serve.
Mm-hmm.
Choose you this day whom will I serve. Will I serve money? Will I serve man? Will I serve myself? Or will I serve Jesus? Will I serve, you know, of course Joshua was talking about Yahweh or you know, God of Israel. So that's something that I've really been processing the last few months, is choose you this day. Bill, you have to choose today.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you going to serve today? Are you going to serve Jesus, or are you going to serve man? You're going to serve Jesus, you're going to serve money, you're going to serve Jesus, you're going to serve this or that, whatever.
Which I love the way you're splitting that. Yep. You know, are you going to serve Jesus or this or that or this or that? Whereas if you simplify it, are you going to serve Jesus or the devil?
Yep.
You know? Yep. And
Jesus or the world, you have to choose.
That I wrote a song called that. It never made it. It wasn't good, but but I did. I like that saying. I use that a lot. I want to transition into the George Jenko, Jordan Peterson podcast.
Yes.
Now, first of all, best mentor ever. I literally sent him this podcast, 3 days ago?
Yeah, it was last week sometime.
Yeah, it was
late
like
last
Friday
week.
or Saturday. Yeah. And I sent him this podcast and was like, hey, you don't have to watch this whole thing, but just, like, I got some clips that I want to go over with you. And then today I asked him, I was like, did you ever check out that podcast? He was like, yeah, I listened to the whole thing. So that was awesome.
Jordan Peterson, man. You got to listen to Jordan Peterson.
So that's one reason I brought it up, is because I figured the timing of that was perfect. Yeah. Because it's right before we have our podcast. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of George Jenko. Yeah. You're a big fan of Jordan Peterson. Yeah. They have that podcast. First, I want to know, what did you take away from it? And then I'll say what I took away from it.
Gosh, I think it was just the... Jordan Peterson is just a super smart guy. I mean, he's just... There are times I almost feel dumb listening to him because I don't understand everything he says.
Tell me about it.
But he, you know, the listen to him on that podcast and listen to other stuff that Jordan Peterson has done, talks he's given, it's okay to not know all the answers. You know, there were a lot of times that George Jenko would ask him this or that, and he would say, I don't know what you mean by that. Mm-hmm. And so I kept kind of honing back in on that. When people ask you stuff, it's okay for you to say, I don't know what you mean by that. And let's kind of dig down. Let's find out what you mean by that.
Yes.
And so that's kind of, I know there was a lot of meat in there, a lot of detail, and I will probably go back and I will watch that podcast a couple different times and really pull more out of it. Mm-hmm. But as I was working around my house, I was, you know, my wife was out of town, and so I was cleaning my house, you know, and doing some stuff around here, and so I was listening to it, and so, but that's something that I kept hearing was, it's okay not to understand what everybody's saying all the time.
Yeah. For me, I enjoyed it, but I watched, I want to say, every episode of that podcast, of the George Janko Show. And as a fan or a viewer, that was not George's best podcast. Jordan Peterson, I feel like I can't, kind of how you were saying, I can't keep up with him 90% of the time. But I feel like George Janko wasn't ready for that, you know, because he knows how smart Jordan Peterson is, but he kind of didn't understand what he was saying a lot of times, and he would pivot away or change up the subject so he didn't look dumb to his audience. Yeah. And he even, this last week, he did another podcast with just him and his team and reflected on it and talked about what he did wrong, how whenever they talked about the sex before marriage, he kind of wasn't willing to hear his part of it. You know, he asked him a question and then was like, okay, well, I'm still going to do what I want, you know. And, you know, he kind of like apologized to Jordan Peterson for wasting his time. And I don't think that it wasn't bad, but it was definitely something that he wasn't ready for. Like, for example, me, I'm not ready to sit down and have a conversation with George Janko.
Right, yeah.
You know, and I feel like he wasn't ready to sit down to have a good conversation with Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, that's not an easy conversation to have. To go into something knowing that somebody is a lot further down the line than you. That's a hard thing to do. One thing that I did notice was that when George was talking on the podcast, he had to go to the bathroom, so he gets up and he goes pee.
And then he talks to his fiance.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson took the time to talk to her. So many times we have a tendency to just not talk to other people around. When we're around people, in a group of people, the primary person we're talking to leaves the room for a minute, and we just shut down and don't talk to anybody.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. But the way Jordan Peterson included her into the conversation and started a whole new, they could have run on a whole new podcast on what he started talking to her about.
Them two were talking about. Which is amazing to me that you say that, because Belle is her name. She does not get very much showtime.
Right.
And she's the co-host. She's in every episode. But she just, kind of how you were saying, nobody talks to her like the way he did.
Yeah.
And she's very good. And I feel like she was, I mean, other than that one part, she didn't hardly say anything throughout the entire interview. And I think that was less of her not being allowed to talk, or this is my show, I think she was kind of realizing in the moment, whereas George realized it after. She was kind of like, I don't understand. You know, she understood that she wasn't keeping up. And
there's not many people on this planet, I would say, that can keep up couch to couch or question to question, you know, point to point with Jordan Peterson. Super smart guy. In his search to, I guess, disprove God, proved God. You know, in his search to, is there more to this life than this? Realize there's more to this life than this. And so, I love that he will not, you know, he doesn't go big into, you got to be a Christian, you know, this and that, that is absolutely what we are. We're Christians. But he's not about religion.
Yeah. I actually, whenever you're done with your point,
no, go ahead.
I have some points, or some clips from that podcast I want to pull up and show. But he talks about that, you know, where one of the best ones, he says, George asked, do you love God with all your heart?
Yeah.
And he was like,
it's impossible.
Yeah. And then he says, okay, well, do you love your daughter with all your heart? And he says, honestly, probably not.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's really hard to pull off. And here, I'll go ahead and pull that up. These headphones aren't long. I think this is the left, this is the right. I have to sit up, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Next time I'll have better everything. I'm hoping to have I'm in the market for a better camera. I have a better microphone, but I need the stand for it. And then I have a headphone splitter, but I only have one pair of headphones. So I need to go here. And I figured that wasn't gonna work. There we go. And then I wanna say this. We'll just watch all of these, they're like 30 seconds long.
If someone isn't listening to you, you should watch for them. If they're not listening, you should stop talking and you should start watching like a hawk. What's been revealed to you is the fact that your understanding of the situation is radically insufficient. You are not where you think you are, and you are not talking to who you think you're talking to. Now, if you cease talking and start watching and listening, they will tell you who they are and what they're up to. Now, that might take a while, although it generally happens faster than you'd think. And then they'll tell you. And then the communication will start to flow again.
There's a question you hate. Do you believe in God?
Well, people don't know what they mean when they ask that question.
Not
what
the
people
same one I was
usually
talking
want,
about.
Christians do this to me mostly. What they really want is they want me to validate their theory of belief. And they don't even know they have a theory of belief because they think what belief is obvious, and it's not obvious at all. Like, is belief your willingness to verbally assent to the reality of a set of facts? Well, that's what an empiricist would say, or a rationalist. And most Christians who ask me that question are rationalist empiricists, and they don't even know it. And so they want me to say, well, God exists the same way a table exists. That isn't a helpful question. It's not formulated properly. And then there's many other forms of belief. You can say one thing and do another, right? Then you might say, well, then what do you believe? Do you believe what you say, or do you believe what you did? And I mean, people are full of contradictions like that.
That's okay, fair. But this is
that
it.
one, I didn't watch that full one, and that was very deep.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that?
That's interesting. And I don't know. That's one to really
Sit with, right?
Yeah, that's one to based on a while and to marinate in. So
Yeah.
I can't give you a quick answer on that one.
No, you're fine. This is the one that I brought up before we pulled this up.
Okay, fair. But this is it. This is the question that I would replace that question.
This is kind of
with.
like an edited funny
Do you
version
love your
of it.
daughter with all of your heart?
Probably not. That's a hard stunt to pull off. Yeah. And it's a hell of a demand. You know, none of us are unblemished vessels. So, no.
Could you elaborate?
What do you mean?
Was that terrifying?
What was horrifying about it? Well, it was horrifying. Faith
I love how he
is very
does that,
straightforward as far as
where someone will ask him a question, and then that's how you know he doesn't have an answer whenever he asks himself the question.
Yeah.
Because he's so good at, we've talked about this before, how he just thinks out loud and he'll like grab thoughts and pull them together.
Yeah.
And sorry, George, I don't want to be a member.
As I'm concerned, the faith is you're going to bet your life on your words, one way or another. And maybe with a particular sentence, you're only betting a few minutes of your life, but you're betting your life on your words all the time. Well, are you going to bet on truth or falsehood? That's the fundamental question. And the fundamental declaration of faith in the redeeming word is that there is no better pathway forward than the truth. And then you can decorate that to some degree with another realization, which is regardless of the evidence that makes itself immediately manifest.
Okay.
You cannot win an argument with your husband, and he can't
This
win
one
an
is very
argument
good.
with his wife. Not unless he wants to defeat her.
He defeats himself.
Well, he lives with a defeated woman. That's not helpful.
And you guys are one. If you defeat her, you defeat yourself.
Not least because now you're living with someone who's defeated and bitter. You can't stomp around and insist that you were right. So imagine that one person in the couple is better at verbal disputes than the other.
Yeah. You're just good at your skill of talking.
So one of the things you want to do, you happen to be the person who's better at making verbal arguments. If your wife has a problem with you, you want to help her make her argument, just on the off chance that she's got something to say, because maybe she's right. It's going to be in her interest to straighten you out. It would be in your interest to listen. That's part of loving your enemy. That's part of giving the devil his due. You want to find out so you don't have to bring the trouble forward.
I want to elaborate on that one for a little bit.
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
When an argument doesn't become an argument, you walk away from it. And I love the way how he said, whenever you're arguing with your spouse and she can't defend her own argument, you need to defend it for her. Which we talk about how hard it is to walk away from arguments and stuff like that. But how hard is that to make the opposing argument for the other person?
That's interesting. Gosh. It's really hard whenever it's not your way of thinking. When my wife and I think totally different. Both of us are a bit of an instant gratification. We want to buy something. I want it now. Why can't I have it next day, Amazon? Why can't I have it now? But so that thought process is always churning in our head. But I don't, man. How would you say that? It's a hard process to. My wife is a very strong-minded and strong-willed person, and she can out-argue me, because I don't like to argue.
Yeah. That's one thing.
I will say, yes, you're right, okay, whatever, so we don't have to argue about it.
But, yeah, so that's one thing. I'll do that a lot, too. But there's often things where I know my point is valid. Like when I get in the religious debates and people are trying to tell me God's not real, I'm like, God is real, and I can almost prove it. I can't prove it, but I can prove what he's done in my life. And it's just impossible for me to, if I'm debating that with someone who can't defend their point.
Yeah.
Their point makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah.
So how am I going to be able to defend their point for them?
I think, I don't know how to say that, because I think that's in the moment. So, I think to answer that question, you'd have to be in the moment.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that, articulate that.
So I guess that would be the best answer you could give for that, is to take that with you in the moment.
Yeah.
Whenever you're in that moment, remember, like, okay, this person obviously can't defend their own opinion. Let me do my best to defend it for them.
Yeah.
And then maybe you'll be able to come up with something.
Yeah, but, there are times when people do not argue. They will not argue.
Yeah.
They will not fight. I have a friend that him and his wife are, he is not, I don't want to say overbearing, because he's not overbearing, but he is aggressive when they get into a discussion. He has to pull himself back. And she is a shutdown, and she is a pull herself away and walk away, where he is a chaser and he is an aggressor. And so you have to understand who you're in conflict with, and who, if you approach my wife in a certain way, then you're going to end up approaching me eventually. and I'm not as nice as she is. When in that moment.
And that's I wanted to elaborate on how you said know the person you're arguing with, because this is something you teach me all the time. Is I mean, you're really nailing it into me almost, and it's like whenever you're arguing and it steps away from an argument, becomes a fight, becomes an insult battle, becomes personal attacks, compared to argumentative attacks.
Right.
When they're attacking you, not your statement.
Right.
Walk away.
Walk away from it, because you are not listening to them, and they are not listening to you, and both of you are saying, "I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong." And in all reality, both of you are wrong.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to win the argument. It's no longer productive. When it becomes, like I say all the time, if it becomes an argument, it's no longer productive. You might as well just go beat your head against the wall and tell the wall it's not a wall. But because I'm going to have my opinion.
Yeah, regardless of who's right or wrong, whenever it gets to that point, there's no discussion.
As humans, I have to be right.
Yeah.
I have to be right. My voice has to be heard. Have you ever been in that room where the loudest voice is heard? Where the family, where you're in this, you're with the extended family, and they're so loud and they're so annoying, and you're like, oh my gosh, can I just leave now? But it's your in-laws, it's your, my father-in-law and my wife's stepmom are amazing. So, but I know, there are times when you're in a room and it's the loudest person gets heard. That's what your argument turns into. When you start arguing with somebody, it no longer becomes productive, because you're just trying to be heard. You're not being heard. You're being told, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, and you're telling that other person, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Where if you just leave the situation and say, hey, we got to table this.
And, I mean, for me, myself, I personally like to think that I'm open-minded.
Yep.
That I will consider your side of the argument, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I will admit it. However, there are things that I'm not willing to admit that.
Yep, absolutely.
And, if I had a conversation with Joe Rogan, who's not a believer,
right,
and he asked me some questions, I wouldn't know how to defend myself.
Right. Yeah.
I still, to this day, even with Levi on our podcast, I kind of fumbled, and he asked me some questions I couldn't answer, and I told him, I told him what you taught me. I can't answer that, but I can find out. I can do my best to find out.
It's better to not to answer than to answer wrong.
Yeah. Which, for example, if you tell me that chair is authentic leather, and I tell you no, it's not, we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then you can convince me.
Yeah.
Now, if we're debating God, and someone says that God's not real, I've made a Facebook post a while back. Not on Facebook. Facebook's bad for your brain. I made a post one time, and it was like, I said this earlier too, but in a different way. I can't convince you that God is real, but I can show you what He's done in my life.
Yeah.
And with what He has done in my life, there's absolutely no way you can convince me that He's not real.
Yeah, you cannot discount what He's done in my life. Now you can choose not to accept what He's done in your own life.
Yeah.
That's, as the guy Judah Smith says all the time, you do you, boo. You choose how you want to do it. But
I mean, that's what Joshua said too, almost. Where he didn't say it all Gen Z like that.
Yeah.
But he said,
choose you this day whom you're going to serve.
Yep.
You
make your choices, I'll make mine.
Yeah. Jesus tells us that too in the two commandments he gave us. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and your body. You have to choose to love God.
Mm-hmm.
You have to choose to. Now, God loves you no matter what.
Yeah.
But you have to choose God.
Absolutely.
And the hardest thing in this is to love your neighbor as you love yourself.
That's what I've been working on very hard.
Yeah.
And you know, I wrote it on here. It's one of my topics. Don McLaughlin.
Mm-hmm.
He came and spoke at one of your groups, and
Right.
you told me about him and how he was speaking at a church.
Yeah.
And I went and heard his message at the church, and it was a hard message for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard because the first 4/5 of it, I didn't know where he was going.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. You know, I guess you could say I have a bit of an A-type personality where I like to know where we're going and what the point is. And the whole time he was preaching, I was in my head, where is he going with this? What is the point? I don't understand. I'm trying to figure him out as he's preaching. And then he gets to the point at the very end and was talking about how the Apostles' Creed and how there was a great war and every nation in that war used that creed as an excuse to fight in the war. He said the one thing it was missing was love.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been trying to share love and love my neighbor as I love myself. Mm-hmm. And I wrote it down as trying to stop fearing, because my goals, everyone who watches this knows I say this almost every episode. I don't want to fear man's judgment. I want to fear God's judgment. Mm-hmm. And I wrote here, trying to stop fearing man's judgment is, I want to say, impossible whenever you are constantly judging man.
Yeah.
And that's something I deal with daily, where someone will say something at my job and I'll get upset with them. And I'll say, and this is kind of, we talked about this off camera, where you don't know what happened in that person's life to get them to where they are in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, whenever they say something disrespectful or they're rude to you, you don't care to think that. Mm-hmm. You don't care to step back and think, why is this person acting this way? You care to think, you're not going to talk to me like that.
Yeah, that's it. You know, nobody knows the cost of your worship. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows what that person is dealing with daily. Nobody understands, you know, the things you go through every day. So it's a constant battle every day. You know, I think about there's an old song about nobody knows the cost of the oil in my alabaster box. That's a story. That song was written about Mary as she washed Jesus' feet, and Judas was. He says, you know, as she's doing it, do you not realize that you could have bought food, you could have sold that, you could have done this, that, whatever. And Jesus rebukes Judas there and says, hey, you don't know, you know, you don't know what she's gone through. You don't know her life. But at that particular time, she was willing to pour out her most costly thing to worship Jesus. That's what we are called to do every day with our life. Our life is our most costly thing. Pour it out onto somebody else and say, hey, love you more than I love myself. Mm-hmm. You know?
And don't underestimate the difficulty in that.
Yeah.
Because I know me, and I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but even for you, you wouldn't do that all the time.
No.
Whereas, I mean, I can't think, okay, for example, the other day, I was talking with my parents, and I was telling them about how, like, this world is, we talked about this in Bible study, this world is just a waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really need anything. The only thing I would say that I truly need, other than food and shelter, is my Bible. And then my dad kind of rebuked me on that, and he was like, okay, so let's take your car back.
Yeah, that's...
And I was like, no. Like, you're not taking my car away. I'm not... Which my car is probably not even my greatest thing I own.
Yeah.
But it's where, like, I'm not willing to sacrifice worldly things for my God all the time. There's some days I would. There's some days I wouldn't.
Yeah, there's days you're going to give up your comfort, and then other days you won't.
Mm-hmm.
As Americans, we live very comfortable. My wife and I have had the opportunity to travel to Africa. I've been 5 times, and I've seen what true poverty looks like. I've been to Vietnam. That's where I met my mentor. Was on the trip to Vietnam to hand out wheelchairs. I've seen what poverty looks like. I stood in a village in Malawi, Africa one time, or I sat in a house, I should say, and there was a little old widow woman. She was, I want to say, she's close to 90, I think is what our translator told us. I watched her sweep her dirt floor. Sweep her
like
dirt
the floor
floor.
Was made of dirt?
Yeah, dirt floor. I watched her sweep her dirt floor, and as she swept it away, what she was doing, she was sweeping the pebbles.
Mm-hmm.
So she was making it where when we sat down or we stepped or we knelt down on a knee, we didn't take a knee or take a rock to the knee, or that'll check your religion right there when you do that. But she swept her floor, and then she got this mat out that she had made out of flour bags. She had sewn these flour sacks together. That mat only came out for special occasions. She honored us enough to sweep her floor and to lay her best mat out. And as I watched my wife share a gospel story with her and watched my wife pray with her, and I stood there, I knelt in that place, in that hut, tears streaming down my face as I'm watching my wife give this message. I watched this 90-something-year-old woman, 80-something-year-old woman that was living in a brick hut that in all reality, you could take the bricks and break them by hand, and it was just stacked, just sand mortar, dirt floor, thatch roof. Beautiful smile. We had just given her some corn and some oil and a bar of soap. You thought you would hand her a check for thousands of dollars. But I watched her take the story that my wife told through a translator. Then I watched this little old widow woman turn to my wife and say, "Now let me pray blessings over you." What? What are you talking about? You don't have anything. You're being allowed to live here in this village with other widow women. And I just gave you some corn and some oil and some soap, and I think there may have been a couple other hygiene products there, but anyway.
Little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she had everything she wanted in life, everything she needed in life, she had. And she was willing to turn those blessings back around and pray blessings over my family. Mm-hmm. And my youngest daughter got to witness that. She sat in that sitting in that hut with us. And is that not what that was a glimpse of the gospel to me. I have what I need. Now let me give you what I have. As I have, as you go, you talk about you know, oh gosh, I can't think where it's at in the Bible. Anyway, Peter and John are going to the temple to worship. They come to the gate called Beautiful. There's a man there, and Peter and John look at him and go, buddy, I don't have any silver or gold to give you, but as I have, I give unto thee. And they pray over this man, and he's healed. And he leaps and jumps and goes on, you know, worshiping God, because these dudes realized they didn't have any silver or gold to give him, but all they have is the Spirit of God. At the end of the day, I may not have $10 to give you, but what I have is a gospel message. What I have is a day of hope. A day that there's going to be a day when the eastern sky is split. And Jesus comes back. And at the end of that time, all I want to hear is, well done. And my friend Steve, our pastor, says all the time, if you don't have a home church, come to Journey Church. There's a plug. But
church merch.
But if you, you know, Steve has said it. I've known Steve for probably close to 30 years now. And I've heard Steve say it time and time again. The only thing you can take to heaven with you is people. That's it.
That's beautiful.
That's it.
That gave me chills.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. It's about giving people Jesus and saying, this is all I got. This is all that matters to me, is that you hear the gospel, that you hear a message of reconciliation. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's, you know, you couldn't pick more dudes that are too different than you and I. What's our common denominator? It's Jesus.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
What's our common denominator? It's seeking the Word, seeking whom He is, seeking whom I want to be.
Relationship.
Yeah.
That's something I got from you that I shared with my last one was, people like to talk about denominations and this and that, religion, right?
Yeah.
And I said, simply, you taught me this, which was, I don't care what denomination, what religion you follow. I don't care if you're a Muslim. I don't care if you are Jewish. I don't care if you're Hindu. I don't care if you're Buddhist. I care, do you have a relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you know, you take the Muslim, the Hindu, the Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, the list goes on.
Yes.
You take the Hindus, you get 170-something gods you can dabble in there. I couldn't keep up with all that. But at the end of the day, you know, Muhammad's dead. You know,
Buddha's dead.
Buddha's dead. They're all dead. They're all laying in the grave still. You know what you can't find? You can't find my Jesus' body, because he got out of the grave. He walked through hell. He took the keys to death, hell, and the grave. It said, death, where's your sting? That's trash talking right there in a good way.
Yeah.
Death, where's your sting? You got nothing, man.
I actually have a post on my Instagram story right now, and it's a picture of him walking out of the tomb, and it says death couldn't hold him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know. Yeah, I mean, this coming Friday is Good Friday.
Good Sunday.
Good Sunday.
Good Sunday's
coming.
Day.
Yeah. So this is Good Friday. Why do we call it good? It was a horrible day, but the good news started that day. You know,
see, me and my dad, I'm so glad you brought that up. Me and my dad just had this conversation.
Yeah.
Or not my dad, me and Levi.
Yeah.
We talked about Good Friday, and he was like, Good Friday, that's the day that Jesus resurrected. I said, no, that's the day Jesus was crucified.
Yeah.
He said, why is that good?
That's the day he started it.
You know, I didn't know that was the right answer.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's really what I responded was, that's the day that it started.
Yeah.
That's the day that...
Yeah.
That's the day that he said it's finished.
Yeah. There's an old sermon by, is it S.L. Lockhart or... S.L. Lockhart, I think's the man's name. I don't know how old the sermon is. It's way old, back in maybe the 50s even. But it's called "That's My Jesus," and go watch that one. Find that one
That's
on
My
YouTube.
Jesus. I'll write that down. Y'all write it down too.
It's
Watch it after this.
That's My Jesus, and and then he has another one, Sunday's Coming, and he's this old preacher, old Southern preacher, and but that's it. I mean, Friday, S.C. Lockhart talks about, Judas is betraying, the disciples are scared, and all this stuff, but Sunday's coming. Friday's happening, but Sunday's coming. Saturday's happening, Sunday's coming.
There's a song from Zach Williams, who's from Arkansas.
Yeah.
I pointed at that. The camera's over there. But Zach Williams, who's from Arkansas, called Sunday's Coming. And I love it simply because, it's not the best song ever made. I'll be honest. It's not that good of a song. But the message behind it, I never skip it because of that. And he talks about the weak. Yeah. And, worldly beliefs, everyone loves Friday. And in that song, he kind of talks about how Friday is a bad day. Mm-hmm. But don't worry, Sunday is coming. Yeah. And
more likely, he kind of pulled that from that sermon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But so let me put yourself in that situation that the disciples lived in, that the people lived in. Mm-hmm. I would almost venture to say that a lot of the people that were in that crowd of people yelling "Crucify" were there when he gave the Sermon on the Mount. There may be some guy out there smarter than me that comes up and says, "You're wrong. You're 100% wrong," and that could be right. I could be totally wrong. But in my mind, there's got to be somebody that was there yelling "Crucify." That was there when he preached the Beatitudes. Yeah. Then when he fed the 5,000. Then when he fed, we call it the 5,000.
5,000 men.
Probably closer to 20,000.
Yeah, not children and families.
Yeah. And so, with leftovers. And then he fed 3,000 another time. Mm-hmm. Another probably 10 to 15,000 people. So, those people all heard the message, but yet they were yelling "Crucify" on that day. Why? Because they had a role to play. And that role is for them to play is the role we play today in our own lives of, I'm not good enough to follow Christ. I'm not good enough to be a Christian. You're 100% right. Yeah. But thanks be to God for grace. Thank you, Lord, for your mercy. Thank you for your undying love and your unconventional love, your radical love for me.
An ex-girlfriend of mine messaged me last night, and she was telling me that she had body image issues. And it almost made me cry because she thanked me for teaching her about Jesus at the end of the conversation. And we haven't been together in a long time, but I've still kind of discipled her. And she was saying that she didn't feel good enough to get baptized. And I said, "You aren't." I said, "Nobody's good enough to get baptized. You don't get in the shower to get clean. Or, no, you don't get clean to get in the shower. Right. You get in the shower to get clean." Yeah. And, we talked for a little bit. But simply, she ended up thanking me, and, that's one thing I'm proud of myself for, because I tend to be emotional. Yeah. And I tend to react in emotion to a lot of things. And, normally if she would have texted me, I would, out of the blue especially, I would have been like, "Don't talk to me." Yeah. But she messaged me needing help in faith. Yeah. And I said, okay, regardless of what I'm feeling, this is more important.
Yep.
And I need to pee very bad.
Okay.
And I know, you gotta pick up kids?
What time is it?
2:30.
Not till like 4 something, so I'm good. Run
Okay.
the restroom real quick.
You
Yeah, go
good?
ahead.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was like gonna end it there, but I didn't want to.
No, you're fine.
Before I go, while I'm gone, I wanted you to talk about how can a Christian person who's watching
Uh-huh.
share their love for Christ with a non-believer or someone who has had a bad experience in Christianity or
Yeah.
church.
So, how can a Christian... So how can a Christian... Sorry folks, if there's anybody watching this. So how can a Christian effectively share the love of Christ with a non-believer or someone who's had a bad experience? I think my biggest thing there would be it's not a comparison. It's not a my story is worse than your story. My sin's worse than your sin. All sin is sin. All stories are, your story is your story. So live in that moment. Live in, give your testimony. Give your talk. As a Christian, you need to learn to give your testimony in less than, I would say less than 3 minutes. But this isn't a comparison. This isn't let me tell you this. This isn't a one-upping situation. But listen to people around you. Listen to their life. Listen to their story. Someone, how can a Christian people share love with us? So you have to embrace the Scripture. What is the Scripture you're standing on as a believer in your life? Mine is a Scripture that I always go back to, and it's one of my favorite Scriptures. Is John 3:16. One of the first ones I ever learned as a kid was John 3:16. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever liveth. Whosoever lives should not. Oh gosh, just
Whoever believes in Him shall not perish.
Yeah, shall not perish.
But have eternal life.
Yeah, but John 3:17 says, "For Jesus did not come into the world to condemn the world, but through Him the world will be saved."
Mm-hmm.
So He didn't come here to condemn it, but He came here because He loved us. He loved you enough that He said, "I'll go and I'll be that guy." So
Tim Tebow, worst football player to ever play, probably. Maybe not. He was good in college.
He was.
NFL wasn't for him, but
he wasn't given the proper chance.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
However, one thing I will always respect about him, his first game, he had John 3:16 on his face.
Yeah.
He ran in the touchdown, and I guess he pointed to it or something, then he did his little Tebow pose. That same day, John 3:16 was the most searched thing on Google.
Yeah.
Out of everything.
They scored that touchdown with 3 minutes and
16 seconds. Wasn't it 3rd and 16?
Yep. Yeah, there was about 5 or 6 different stats that lined up with.
Yeah, and then he threw for 316 yards. It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that part. First, one thing I want to say, real quick, is I want to apologize because I wrote our list out of order. I normally have my questions on top and my topics underneath. Yeah. This was supposed to be your interview, and then we didn't really get into that. Yeah. So we're gonna give me a time. How much time do we got?
Like I said, I don't have to pick kids up till about 4 or so. So we're good there.
All right. So. Okay. We'll make this happen. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and start getting into some interviewing questions. Okay. This is where the editing part that I was telling you about would come in handy, because then I could like put this in the beginning. Yeah. But we do it live. Yep. So that they see the mistakes I make. First one I have is, how long have you been in your faith journey?
In my faith journey.
And I want to add to that because I didn't know this about you before, but I know that you walked away from it.
Yeah.
So, how long has it been since you've returned to faith?
Probably close to 20 years I started this journey back in.
Woo! So, 2 decades.
Yeah. Maybe not quite that long, but close to 20 years. Started my journey when I was probably 5 years old when I walked in the altar and confessed my worst sins ever, at age 5. They were horrible, probably.
Terrible.
Yeah. But and then when I was 13, I walked away from God.
I want to say how beautiful that is, though, because even though they were, probably little sins, at 5 years old, you confessed. Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't confess until, I believe, I might have been 18. I want to say 19. Yeah. That was my first time ever confessing. And I grew up in the church. I've told you that. Yeah. But there's a song that I love. And it says, I grew up in the church, but my heart wasn't in it. Yeah. And that's kind of how I was. And
you hear that a lot in this discipleship world. You hear that a lot about, I grew up in church, but I didn't understand who Jesus was.
Yeah. That relationship wasn't there.
People start living in religion instead of relationship.
All right. So, I didn't hear your exact advice, but I heard you talk about sharing your testimony.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to share your testimony?
Yeah, I can do that.
So you said you don't have to do it in under 3 minutes. However, I heard you say in under 3 minutes. Mine took 2 hours.
Yeah. The reason I say that is because, let's say you're in an elevator, and you're in an elevator, and it's, hey, how you doing, kind of thing, and all of a sudden Jesus says, I want you to tell that person about me. You got to do that. You got 90 seconds.
I like that as well because TikTok. Yeah. There's like studies. I'm not 100% sure. Don't come from me, but there's studies that have shown TikTok produces ADD in people, and people's attention spans have gone down significantly since being on TikTok regularly.
I can see that. Yeah.
And
I wouldn't say they produce ADD. I would say they produce an impatient way of thinking now, more so than ADD is something that somebody is diagnosed with and born with. And yeah, it's not something you just all of a sudden say, I got this. It's I have dyslexia.
It has damaged their attention span.
Yeah, very much so.
And so I think that's very healthy, a very healthy way to share the gospel with someone in less than 3 minutes so that they can stay tuned.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so if you really want to dig into my testimony, it's going to be a cup of coffee or a meal or a cigar. That's to get into my testimony. We're going to be there a while. really, really get into who I am and where I've come from. But a brief, I don't know what's the right word, brief synopsis of who I am is as I was born in California to a dad that was making a living the best way he could. A questionable lifestyle that he lived, as far as choices of the way he made money on the side. Don't know what. No, he collected money for people on the docks in Long Beach. I don't know what statute of limitation is, or a lot of stuff he did. So, and I don't know any names, so we're all good there. But yeah, there was a lot of questionable things. But so he had to get out of California, so we ended up in Oklahoma, where I grew up, and moved there when I was 4. And my mom was raised in and out of church. My dad was raised in and out of church as well. My mom was raised Baptist. Dad was raised Assembly of God. Went to church when I was 5 years old. A preacher named Davy Hodges. I don't know if Davy's still alive. I can't imagine he is. But Davy was preaching, and I went to the altar at age 5 and gave my heart to Jesus. And was baptized, I think, the next week, I believe. Of course, in the Baptist faith, you're baptized pretty quick. You know, they're really quick on the baptism. So
is that so? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
I was having questions about that because. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I was wrong. See, I can say it, but I had that flipped around where Methodists would baptize babies.
They do. They sprinkle them, yeah.
They what?
I think they sprinkle water on them. Anyway, yeah, I think that's why they do.
Well, I don't know if they do, because I know it was like either Baptist or Methodist, and that's kind of what they disagreed upon. Yeah. But someone said to me that Baptists baptized babies.
No, they don't baptize babies.
Or at a young age.
Yeah, when you're at salvation, they will baptize. You know. Mm-hmm. That's one thing they want to do quickly is baptism.
But Methodist, I remember because I went to a Methodist church, they did confirmation for kids. Yeah. And then they would baptize adults.
Yeah. But, like I say, it's kind of actually, it made me think of Lutherans, but I don't know.
Sorry.
It's all about flavors.
Baptized at 5 years old?
Yeah, I was baptized 5 years old. Served God, best a 5-year-old could, I guess. And then whenever I started kind of realizing, I was actually felt like I was called to preach at that point. Mm-hmm. Told Davey that, and I have a note down. It's down in my mom's Bible somewhere, but of a lady kind of wrote that word out that I was going to be called to preach at that time, and when I got old enough to realize what that meant, I remember telling God out loud, God, if you're going north, I'm going south. Don't want nothing to do with
Jonah.
Don't want nothing to do with you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear about you. Don't want nothing to do with you. And growing up...
Can I ask why you think that was?
Because it was going to be a big responsibility. Mm-hmm. Didn't want to own it. Yeah. Didn't want that responsibility in my life. And so, I grew up in a home that was my mom and dad, not necessarily a great home. My dad dealt with a lot of anger issues, but faith was always part of his life and part of my mom's life. And so whenever things got hard, mom and dad would go to church. They treated God as an ATM almost.
Yeah.
So as I went on through life and graduate high school, my dad had an opportunity to bring Mid-Continent Concrete to Arkansas. He was going to be the representative to bring it here. And so we moved over here where my grandparents lived on the lake. It was a concrete company, ready mixed.
And the only word I understood was concrete.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm assuming concrete.
Yeah, yeah. Mid-Continent Concrete was the name of the company.
Mid-Continent.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they're changed now to Eagle Concrete. I don't know, but anyway, it was a ready mix. So the big trucks you see turning concrete, he worked for them, and so he brought them to Arkansas during the big building boom in the '90s, and I met my wife, very strong woman of faith, and her and I started dating. We dated for 3.5 years, and then we got married. And we always went to church. She was, like I say, she's very strong in her faith, and I always had this in and out of deal with church. I'd fall in and out of my relationship with God. I almost would say I almost fell in and out of religion. And but anyway, there was a Sunday that, or no, I'm sorry, it was a Tuesday, I believe, maybe a Thursday. But anyway, it was a revival service. I went to church, that revival service, for some reason. Don't know why I was even there. Do know now, but I didn't know then. And a man named Rick Allen was preaching. Never forget Brother Rick. And he said, "What are you waiting for?" I can't tell you what he preached. I don't remember. But I remember him looking in the back corner of that building I was sitting in and said, "What are you waiting for?"
That's how my sermon was with Pastor Steve the first time. I can't tell you what he preached. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I know that's the day I got saved.
So I got up and I didn't run to the altar because Mama said never run in church. But I got to the altar pretty quick, and I remember I told God that day, "You go, we go." That's the day that I said yes to God. That's the day I said that I won't look back, that I will not mess up again. Mm-hmm. Have I failed God? Yes, I have. To say that I have not sinned is an idiot. I have. But that's the day that I started my journey to become a man of faith. And then I go on for years and years, close, 15 years, 20 years, and then I meet the true God in that time, and then I meet the man that mentors me. His name is Larry Watkins. Larry and I we met in Vietnam on a mission trip that neither one of us really wanted to be on, but we were there, and Larry and I connect 6 months after we get back from that trip. One thing that about Larry that I'll talk about is so I knew there was something different about Larry, and there was another gentleman named Jason Jenkins. Larry and Jenkins both. There was something different about those dudes. And so when we would all, I don't remember how many of us there were on the trip, but we would all get on these buses to go travel where we were going to go. They hand out wheelchairs, and I remember I would sit back and I would wait and I would see in line where Watkins had gotten to, and I would get on the bus after him so I could sit in the seat behind him, and I would listen to what the man said. I listened to him talk to another good friend of mine. I listened to him talk about what it was to be a Christ follower and what it was to be a man of God. Watkins didn't know I was listening. He's talking to this other brother, and he didn't know I was listening. And but we get home from that trip. COVID happens, all the mess of COVID.
Was that trip for like Arkansas churches or?
No, that was actually through Sam's Furniture. They did a trip. Sam's Furniture up
and
here.
That's a local company.
Yeah, local.
Okay.
Local business here in Springdale, Arkansas.
And I won't
it's a big
say
furniture
what
store.
I was gonna say because I would have sounded unintelligent.
Yeah. So Sam's Furniture is a local furniture store here in town that a great partner to the community, to this community. Very charitable in their
That's
givings.
A plug.
Yeah. Yeah, get it at Sam's. Get you Joe. But, no, just great people. But they partner with wheelchairs across America, I think it is, and they take wheelchairs to different countries and hand them out. And so that was how Watkins and I got hooked up together. And we got together after we got back from that trip about 6 months after the curve started flattening after COVID. And we get back from that trip, and him and I have lunch, and he really started telling me there's more. There's more to being a Christ follower than just reading your Bible and praying every so often. Mm-hmm. And he started telling me, hey, you have to tell people who Jesus is, and begin that journey of there's more to it. Matthew 28 comes into play there. Go and make disciples. I've said that several times on this podcast. Go and make disciples through all nations. And to make disciples is to teach. Let somebody be your apprentice. That's what we are. That's what we are as disciples of Christ. I am Jesus' apprentice. That some people may hear that statement and go, "Are you kidding me? He just said that." That's my goal. Mm-hmm. My goal is to be more like Jesus. Am I going to be like Jesus? No, I'm not. I'm not going to get that accomplished on this side of heaven. But that's the goal. The goal is to be like him. Am I going to fail? Yes. Am I going to get up and am I going to dust myself off and say, mess that one up? Yes, I am. And tomorrow when I wake up, I'm going to say, Jesus, here I am. Don't let my feet touch that floor until you're ready to use me. Give me this day. Jesus, today I choose you today. I choose you to serve today. That's my life. That's me in a nutshell right there. Mm-hmm. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you. They're plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to do good."
Plans to give you hope in the future.
Yep.
I know that one. Yep. I have it on the jacket. Yep. And I just did a song the other day, and my favorite verse is Romans 8:31. Yep. For our God is with us, who can be against us. I was recording a song and there's like a little bridge in it, and I was like, I'm gonna read Romans 8:31, and then I kind of looked back, and it's like a 3-minute testimony is what this song was. Yeah. It's a song about my life and how I got to God, and so I thought, wait a minute, that's a great verse, but I need to read Jeremiah 29:11.
Yeah. And
so I have that in my song where one of my things I always do is I always say I got the Bible with me while I'm recording, and then like that's kind of how like the intros to my songs.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, I'm sitting there recording my song and I have the Bible right here, so I just open it up and I read it into the microphone as I'm. Yeah. But that's probably two of my favorite verses is Romans 8:31 and Jeremiah 29:11.
Yeah, that's Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet, because man, when that guy was when he was a prophet over Israel, it was a messed up place. It was, the people were not doing right, and he just spent his whole time just in pain for his people, and so that's kind of where we're at in America today, is the fact that God's in pain for his, for his people, and as Christ followers, we need to be somewhat attentive to that, and say, I'm going to stand in the gap for that guy, and I'm going to go get that guy.
Back to the revival that's happening right now is so many people are taking that step.
Yeah.
And not to pat myself on the back, but I started a podcast, which is something I've wanted to do my entire life. Yeah. But I wanted to do a comedy podcast and make secular jokes and just kind of have something people could laugh at.
Yeah.
And then I just had that conviction in my soul where I can't lead people to Christ doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said, if I'm going to do this podcast, it's going to be with the intentions of leading people to Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what your heartbeat needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've said it for a long time. Somebody convinced me that it was a good idea to follow Christ, so I need to convince somebody else that's a good idea to follow Christ. And so, and that's what this life is all about.
Yeah.
Choose you this day whom you will serve. So, yeah, man.
So, my next question is, how... Let's see. I'm just gonna ask it that same way. I was gonna reword it and say like, how does someone else? But I want to know how you connect with God on a daily basis.
I try to make it a point every morning not to step out of my bed till I have prayed, or use me today. But every day, I try to look for the opportunity to tell somebody about Jesus, or to be a vessel of Jesus. Now, there are days that I can do that outside of my home, and there's other days that it's done in my home as my wife and I do foster care. Mm-hmm. So, as these kids that we're fostering today, every day it's a goal of mine for them to know that in this home where we live today, where they're having to stay for a short time, is that they're loved by us, but more than anything, they're loved by Jesus. And so every day, that's the goal, is for that, and for me to lead my family well, and to be able to do that, I have to connect with the Father through prayer, through supplication, through the Word, through giving of myself, allowing myself to be led by God. Mm-hmm. Every day, it's being Ephesians 5, the latter part of Ephesians 5, to live a life as Christ lived, to love my wife as Christ loved the church. Do I love my wife perfect? No, I don't. Do I strive to? Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. Do I lead my wife? Do I lead my home perfectly? No. Do I strive to? Yes, I do.
I mean, what does Miss Cindy say every Sunday?
Yeah.
At the end of church.
Go be Jesus to somebody.
Yep.
Now that could be as simple as buying somebody a cup of coffee, mm-hmm. or that could be as hard as buying somebody a hotel room.
Yep.
Or buying somebody a tank of gas, or doing the hard thing and saying, no, I'm not giving you any money. No, I'm going to pray for you.
People often think that, and whenever they see Christians like not giving to the homeless.
Yep.
I live next to a gas station, mm-hmm. where there's homeless people every single day, and I have made the mistake of giving them money. Yep. And I've made the mistake of watching him go to the liquor store across the street. And now if he wants to get drunk, kudos to him.
Yeah.
But me being Jesus to that person isn't enabling him to go get drunk.
Right.
Now I would go in the gas station and buy him some food. I'll do that today, because I go to this gas station all the time. I used to work there. Yeah. So it's where I like to... I've gotten to know this guy, and we have a relationship, and, it went from him asking me for money to where now he sees me and says, God is good.
Yeah.
And, he probably doesn't know that, but that makes my heart feel good.
Yeah, it's your job to plant the seed. So, to be Jesus to somebody is to understand that some people plow and till the ground, prepare the ground. Some people plant, some people water, but some people harvest. Mm-hmm. Know your role. Yeah. Know your role. And I was listening to a comedian the other day talking about he was in a biracial relationship, and he was talking about people from the opposite race of him were yelling, stay in your own lane, because he was talking about his life, and his wife's oldest son, sending him to school, and stuff. But anyway, it was a funny bit this man was doing, but there was so much truth in that.
Yeah.
To understand that, to stay in your own lane, to do the things that you're supposed to do. And as a Christ follower, that means that you share the gospel. That means that you share the love of Christ. That means that you share who He is to you. Now tomorrow, the same Jesus that you serve today will be different tomorrow.
I'm listening.
Yeah. So you have to understand that He changes daily, but He doesn't change.
Yeah.
That's a what? But His love never changes, but the method that you have to deliver it may change.
That's deep. Everything you just said, that last sentence right there, kind of like rocked my world. It's true, too, because even with the people I try to disciple to, I can say something to them one day that'll work.
Yeah.
And he'll say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable going to church, but come over and we'll watch it online together.
Yep, absolutely.
And then the next day I could approach him the exact same way, and back to what we were saying before, something happened in his life where he says, I not today. Just like let me be. And
there comes a time where you have to understand that you can't carve rotten wood. Mm-hmm. My friend Larry says that. My mentor tells me that a lot. You can't carve rotten wood.
I need to get a book and just write your quotes down. Like that's like two off, like boom boom.
The second one's not mine, that's Larry's. But but there's truth in that. You can't carve rotten wood. It's not useful.
Yeah.
It doesn't even burn well. I mean, it's not even worth keeping warm with because it goes too fast. So,
and
that's not to say give up on somebody quick.
Something I've been asked was, why doesn't God speak to me? And I want your opinion on the way I handled this, which was, I was pretty assertive with my answer. And I said, what do you mean? And then he was like, whenever I pray, I'll say, God, talk to me. And I don't hear anything. He doesn't speak. And now, I will say there are times where I feel like in that same situation for me, I've heard God speak. Mm-hmm. But 99% of the time, whenever God's speaking to me, it's not like that. God's speaking to me through Scripture. Yep. You haven't been in your Scripture, so God's not speaking to you.
So, why isn't God speaking to me? Are you listening? I mean, so this is what my prayer looks like daily. Sometime through the night I will stop, and this will be my model of prayer. Mm-hmm. Is I have a list of people that I pray for every day. Some of them are missionaries, some of them are, that are not saved.
Hopefully I'm on that list, right?
yeah, but you're on that list. My Thursday, the Thursday night guys, so I guess you're on there twice. But the families that I've met, overseas, being in Africa on mission trips, and the young people that we met, in Vietnam. Around the lake in Hanoi, there's a beautiful lake in Hanoi, and we met some college kids there, and was able to share Jesus with them. And those are people I pray for every day. Friends of mine that have a church in Oxford, Mississippi. The church plant, and just there's this whole list of people I pray for every day. But in that prayer time, I pray for my wife and my kids, of course, my daughter's future marriage, and all these things. But at some point, I have to shut up. Not an easy thing for me. I like to talk.
Yeah, it's.
But I have to shut down and say, "All right, God, I'm going to hear you today."
And
You
there's
speak.
people who don't like to talk.
Yeah.
That heard that it's time to shut up and thought that would be easy, but it's not, because usually whenever that it's time to shut up comes is right whenever you have something to say.
Yeah. In that time to be quiet, you have to cleanse cleanse is the right word. You have to clear your mind of the chatter. You have to clear your mind of the things that's happening in the foster care case. You have to clear your mind of all the wedding plans that are happening right now in our home.
Which is very hard for me in the mornings.
Mhm.
And I've talked with you about this before, where I've been trying to make it my thing. I pray every morning in my car on my way to work.
Yeah.
I've been trying to pray every morning before I step out of my bed.
Yeah.
Right? God, use my feet, take me where you want to go.
Yeah.
I find it very hard in that prayer to stay focused, because it's first thought in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, where's my cats? What time is it? Did I sleep good? I'm
absolutely.
waking up and my thoughts are just everywhere. Sometimes I'll have wild dreams.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, what just happened? But I'm trying to get through this prayer, and that's one thing I did just the other day. I thought, I need to stop.
Yeah.
Call
your chaos into order.
Everything needs to leave my mind except for my time with God.
Yeah.
And George Jenko's podcast that he reflected on his Jordan Peterson episode, he talked about getting upset with his fiance before because she was saying a prayer, and he asked her something, he didn't know she was praying, and she said, George, I'm praying right now. And he was upset. Not upset that she was like, hold on. He was upset that she was disrespectful to God. Because he said, if you were talking to me and someone else came in and you stopped talking to me and started talking to them, I would feel disrespect. He said, so for you to do that to God is 1,000 times worse.
I disagree with that, because when, let's say, a 4-year-old, which happens in our home a lot,
Yes.
comes running up and you're having a conversation with one of his brothers or his sister, or I'm having a conversation with my wife and one of my kids. So I'm having that conversation, and I have to look at that kid and say, I have to break away from this conversation with my wife and say, I'm talking to her right now, and come back to it.
Mm-hmm. So
to me, that's not rude, because I've acknowledged that, hey, I hear you and I see you, but I'm over here for just a minute.
yeah.
So, and I think that's something that, as you pray, and if somebody walks in a room, there's a great song by Brandon Lake. I think it was written by Stephen Furtick. Talking to Jesus, and I can resonate with that song because that's my childhood. Mm-hmm. I can remember hearing my granny pray.
What is it called?
Talking to Jesus.
Talking to Jesus. Brandon Lake. I'm a big fan of him, but I haven't heard that song.
So, but I think it's actually under Elevation Worship's canopy, or under their,
which they did a whole thing together. Yeah. So yeah.
But anyway, as you're praying, somebody walks in a room, they don't understand that you're praying. So you have to, and if you're in the moment where you have to say, hey, I'm praying right now, then, invite them into your prayer time. Don't dismiss them. Say, hey, come pray with me.
I like that. I like that.
Don't dismiss them.
Now, I would say I don't disagree all the way.
Yeah.
Because I think it's situational.
Well, you're okay to be wrong.
I'm okay with admitting it too. But I would say that, for example, one time that similarly happened to me, and I was wrong in this situation, and this is why I see how it could be disrespectful, and it was because, well, TikTok brain. I don't even watch TikTok, but I have a very short attention span. One time I was in my prayer, and my dad messaged me on my phone to turn the heat down, and then I ignored the message. I heard my phone go off, but I was like, hold on, I'm gonna finish praying. And then he ding 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 ding. He was like, why are you ignoring me? And then called. I didn't answer the call. At this point, I'm in my prayer still. I'm not knowing it's him. I'm thinking it's my ex-girlfriend. I'm like, oh. At first, I thought it was I don't know who I thought it was at first, but I was like, who's texting me this late at night? It's 8 o'clock. I'm in bed. Yeah. And then, I go to bed early. But then whenever it starts blowing up, I'm like, oh, that's my ex-girlfriend. I don't even want to respond to that. And then my dad comes in my room and says, so you're just going to ignore me? And then I stopped my prayer. And I didn't finish my prayer. I stopped right in the middle of it. And I said, I'm trying to pray. And then he told me what he needed. So I got up, turned the heat down. And then, I got up to turn the heat down. And then he was like, no, I already did it. You're good. He was like, I was texting you so I didn't have to get up. Now I had to get up. And I was like, great. Then I went back in my room and didn't finish my prayer.
Yeah. What?
I was distracted. I forgot that. I didn't forget that I was praying, but I forgot to finish.
Yeah. That's, I'm very big on the AWG, your appointment with God.
Say that one more time.
AWG.
AWG, okay.
Appointment with God.
Sounded like you said AWG.
So make your appointment with God. Set your time when you know that you can pray.
Yeah.
Mine could be 9:15. Mine is usually 9:30, 9:15.
I will usually.
Everybody else has gone to bed.
Sleep. Yeah. Which is
I'm
why
a night
that's
owl.
your perfect appointment.
Yeah. I'm a night owl, and so I don't go to bed till 10:30, midnight, and I get up 7, whatever. I'm a night owl. I require sleep, but I don't choose not to sleep. So, but I set my appointment with God when I know that everybody else is away, and that I can have that time. So, is it a sacrifice? Yes, it is. Your appointment with God needs to be a bit of sacrifice. But it has to be I hear people say it all the time. I pray on the way to work, like you said. I don't doubt that a bit, but you're not in true focus because you're driving. So set your appointment with God when you can focus on Him, where you can lock everything else down.
Yeah, where there is no distraction.
Yeah. And that time fluctuates.
Yeah. I want to ask you, because I've been asked, and I don't know how to answer the way that you would know how to answer. And that is, now before I even ask, because I just look bad, I've learned more and more about it, right? You taught me whenever I don't know the answer to something, tell them I don't know the answer, but I can find out, or I can do my best to find out. And so that's kind of what I did with this question. And I still haven't found, it's been, I want to say, close to 3 weeks, if not 3 weeks, and I haven't gotten back with this young man. And it's because I've figured it out, but I haven't figured out how to word it.
Okay.
And that is, what is the Holy Spirit?
So the Holy Spirit he is the third man in the Trinity, not less important than anybody else. We need to, that's the thing, we sometimes we kind of classify him as less important because he came last in being mentioned, but he's there from the beginning. But so the Holy Spirit is when God speaks to you. It's the voice that God uses to get your attention. I don't know if it's the right way to say it or not, but it's your conscience. It's that thing that you're dealing with. Comes Molly.
Here comes Molly.
But
like, where you been?
but yeah, so yeah, it's a.
It took so long to get up here.
He's leaving now, but the Holy Spirit is it's your time with God. It's that one that draws you in, that says who God is in you. It's your internal voice, one you commune with or speak with the most.
So I feel like we can kind of combine our answers.
Yeah.
Because mine that I came up with was the Holy Spirit is what Jesus left us with.
Yeah. So he's our comforter. Yeah, he's who Jesus, when Jesus left, he said, I'm going to send you a comforter. So he is the one that takes our needs before the Father himself. And so,
Oh, I got so many good questions. I was like, okay, let's go to this one. Well, maybe not. And then I was like, wait, I need to pick one. Like, I got so many. Okay, you know what? Let's get laughable. What's the strangest, if you feel comfortable sharing, the strangest prayer request you've ever received?
I don't know. As I looked through the list, I was trying to think of. I haven't really ever had any really strange ones. I can tell you a funny one that my wife had one time.
Okay.
This is, oh my gosh. So this lady, she went down to the altar, and Cindy was praying with her. My wife was praying with her at the altar one time, and she was praying about just having all this pain in her abdomen. Oh, I got all this pain. And so Cindy prayed, God give her relief from her pain, this and that. And so she goes on. The next Sunday, the lady comes back to church, and she says, well, I figured out what my pain was. And Cindy says, oh yeah, well, God answered your prayer. Yeah, it turns out I just needed to fart. That was like,
that's how God works.
Yeah. She said I couldn't go to the bathroom, but I went to the doctor, and sure enough, I just needed to fart real good. That unlocked everything. So.
That's beautiful. It's funny, but you prayed and your prayer was answered, and it was.
I remember Cindy standing there going, "Well, all right, we're rolling with that."
Yeah, okay. All right, we're gonna jump down a little bit. What is your opinion on social media? Or no, before that one, we'll do that one next.
Okay.
How should a Christian navigate the tension between being in this world but not of this world?
Interesting. So to be of this world is to be of this world is to be consumed by this world. And I think I think this happens the older you get. You know, the less you want to be, the less technology you want. You know, you know, Steve preached yesterday at our church that one of the things he said was that people, that technology has gotten so far that we were unhappy because things aren't happening fast enough. And I got to thinking about it as he was preaching that, as he made that point. And I got to thinking about podcasts I've listened to in the past and people that I listen to a lot. Jocko Willink is one of them. Cameron Haynes, David Goggins. I'm a big David Goggins fan.
I
wish I could wish I could buy into Goggins' thing, but I'm having a hard time getting there mentally.
At work, you know, I used to be a cart pusher, and doing it by hand sucked. You know, it's the parking lot's a hill.
Yeah.
So it's all uphill whenever you're pushing a load of carts.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, I was just going as hard as I could throughout the whole day. And I really was doing it because the faster the day went by. But my coworker asked me, because he was using like the little tool thing, you know, that made it so much easier. But he was like, how are you doing that? He was like, you're going faster than me by hand. And I was like, well, you're not going very fast. Yeah. And then I said, who's going to carry the boats?
Yeah, yeah, that's Goggins' thing, man. Who's going to carry the boats? But, yeah, I mean, buy into that. But, you know, the thing that I see about those guys a lot is that they don't depend on the technology of this world.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys, Goggins is on a whole other level.
He's not human.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with who David Goggins is, read about Goggins.
Yeah.
You'll feel horrible about yourself. But Goggins is an amazing guy. But the thing that Steve preached yesterday was that we're getting distracted and we're getting aggravated and we're getting all these things about technology. But when are we the happiest? When we can unplug from technology.
Yeah.
So to be conformed into this world is to embrace that technology. Now, I'm not saying go out and be a prepper or you know, a doomsday guy or a, you know, an off the grid guy. I'm not saying that.
I've considered it.
Yeah. but I am saying shut your phone off for every once in a while, or put your phone out of arm's reach every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know, and pick up a paper book and read it. You know, or something of that nature. But to be conformed to this world is to live a life that is conformed to this world.
And that, what you just said about put your phone out of arm's reach, and read a paper book.
Yeah.
That's literally the best way to escape.
Yeah.
I've just recently, actually, I used to hate it, but now I love reading. And I love reading because I've gotten this worldly obsession with becoming smarter.
Yeah.
You know, where technically, I could make the debate like, well, pray for wisdom. You know,
yeah.
It's like
wisdom is different than intelligence.
Yeah. Stomped on that. But I've been obsessed with this idea of becoming smarter for the podcast.
Yeah.
So I guess it is a worldly obsession because I want to seem intelligent. I want to seem like a good leader for my audience.
Yeah. Well, but you need to be proficient in whatever task you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so to be proficient, you need to educate yourself in that task. You know, I love to fish, but I haven't fished much here lately.
You told me you were going to take me. I've been waiting on the
But for me to be able to go out and have a successful fishing trip, I have to go out and be willing to embrace in the scenario, embrace the element. What's the wind doing today? What's the sun doing today? If I'm going to Beaver Lake, I don't want sun. If I'm going to Grand Lake, I do want sun. If I'm on Grand Lake, I don't. I want wind because they bite better. Where they're being shoved up, where the warm water's coming in. We could go off on this whole fishing thing. I can speak for hours on fishing, more than probably. I can totally nerd out on fishing, but no, I'm not a live scope guy. I won't put that out there. You won't know what that is, but fishermen do.
All right, he's not that.
I am old school.
Whatever that is,
yeah,
it's not him.
I'm old school. So, but whatever task you're going to do, work to be proficient in it, but do not be consumed by that task.
Yes, which is where I was going.
It's not where your identity is.
It's where I was going with that was, as much as I love to read all these books, my favorite thing to do is, because I'll read my book and I'll stop and check my phone.
Yeah.
But when I'm reading my scripture, my phone's on Do Not Disturb. My phone's in the other room.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything. The only other thing I have is my notebook, so I can take my notes. But that's pen and paper. I'm reading off paper and writing on paper. It's beautiful, and it's where, like, my first couple times coming to the Journey Church, I started taking notes. And I would take them on my phone. I still have the notes on my phone. But, I just kind of felt, I want to say, a form of conviction. Where I was like, I'm going to take notes on paper. I need to take notes on paper. Because sitting here typing, sure, it's faster and easier, but I'm not remembering it.
Yeah.
Whenever I take my notes on paper, I can go home. First of all, I started taking notes so that I could share the sermons with my family. Whenever I took them on my phone, I would go through them and then kind of just be me mumble reading and not really no tone. Whereas since I've started writing them on paper, I don't need my notebook. I go home and share the sermon with them while my notebook's sitting in my car still, and just because it's in my brain. The message is in my brain. Whereas I feel like with this, I'm just kind of blindly. It's like texting. I'm not really putting effort into what I'm doing.
Yeah, because to text on your phone or put notes on your phone, it's just an involuntary thing. But when you actually put it to pen and paper, it's a voluntary thing. You are volunteering your mind to that thought process of, I'm going to write this out all the way. Or when you're typing it on your phone, your iPad, your computer, you start typing out the word everything, and you type EV, and all of a sudden everything comes up. Click and go. Click and go. And so you don't have to finish a thought when you're using technology. And I'm not throwing rocks at technology. I love technology because that's how my wife makes her living. And so technology can be good, but it can also be detrimental. And does it consume you? No, it does not consume me, because I refuse to be a slave to it.
I've heard once before about, like, it's impossible to go anywhere and there's not everyone on their phone. And if you look at the way they are, they're sitting there holding it like this, it looks like they're praying to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're a slave to it, just like you said. And that was where I want to go into the next question. We'll wrap it up after this. What is your opinion on social media? And the internet in general. Not technology itself, but...
Yeah. So, social media has its good and its bads. It's ugly and it's beautiful. And it's all the things. When you find yourself wrapped up in the identity of your Instagram account or your Facebook account or your whatever account is coming out tomorrow, you know, I mean, it changes seems like every year. I think it's become very easy to bully on social media.
That's underappreciated.
Yeah.
Like, people will talk about the good and bad of social media, but no one talks about that.
Yeah. My daughter went through a situation. My oldest daughter went through a situation. And there was I'll call him a coward and a keyboard warrior.
Keyboard warriors.
that had some pretty harsh words from my wife. Whenever I got involved in it, there was a lot of name calling. He hurt my feelings pretty bad because he called me fat because, like, I didn't look around the corner and, you know, I don't look in the mirror and see what leads me. Anyway, I know I'm a fat guy, you big dummy. So I'm well aware I'm the one that made myself this way. People are so dumb. But anyway, he said all kinds of hurtful and mean things.
Mm-hmm.
He was a real big talker, and but that really bothered me because it wasn't that he bullied me, because it wasn't that he was bullying me at all. Mm-hmm. And I caught myself in a world where I was starting to lash out back at him.
Yep.
And I caught myself beginning this argument, and it was going to be an argument because nobody was going to win. And as we started that, I called my friend, my mentor Larry, and I said, "Hey, Buzz, this is what's going on." And I told Larry, and he said, "What good does it do to send him another message?" And I said, "Well, it doesn't do any good." And he said, "You're right, it doesn't. So why are you going to send it?"
Yep.
And so that day I said, "No, I'm done."
That was before, music is really whenever I kind of began the journey. But before I started this podcast, because I wasn't ready to start this podcast, I just kind of told myself it's now or never.
Yeah.
And before I did that, I had to convince myself, or not even convince myself, but get myself to realize the internet is not real life.
No, you're. For me to, you look at somebody's Facebook post or somebody's Facebook page. What is it? It's a highlight of their life.
It's a highlight, exactly.
So nobody puts the ugly out there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you put the time when, you know, so and so passed away or my dog ran away. You put that out there. What are you looking for?
Attention.
You're looking for attention. You're looking for somebody to feel sorry for you. I don't want you to feel sorry for me.
Absolutely.
I don't need you to feel sorry for me.
I'm gonna go on a little tangent here.
Yeah.
But I convinced myself that, like, first of all, whenever someone writes a negative comment to me, who are they?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's nothing that's more embarrassing to me than someone that takes out time to write comments under a YouTube video. Yeah. And the best part about that is 90% of the accounts that write negative comments to people are anonymous accounts.
Yeah, coward.
And
put your name on it.
Yeah, right.
Stamp it.
And I feel like I forgot where I was going with that. What did you say?
I'm a firm believer. If you don't stamp it, put your name on it, you're a coward.
Yeah.
Before
that, whenever I said I was going to go on a tangent, you were talking about, attention.
Yeah.
I thought I remembered it.
Yeah, one of my favorite restaurants here in town, is a Thai place, and the lady's name that runs it, her name is Connie. Sweet lady. I'm getting to know her a little bit.
Tony from Tony Town?
Connie. But,
oh, Connie.
Connie, yeah. She's from, I don't know what her real name is because she's from Thailand. I doubt her name's Connie. But anyway, sweet lady.
Mm-hmm.
But she was telling, I was in there with a friend of mine here a while back, and she was saying, she was asking us to give her a review on Yelp or something.
Yeah.
Google
and reviews.
Yeah, something. And so I still haven't done it, but I can tell you it's amazing food. But anyway, she said, yeah, somebody gave me she said I have one negative review, and she said, and she explained it as she was checking me out, running my card. She explained it that it was a man that called, and she couldn't take his order right then because the restaurant was full.
Mm-hmm.
She has 5 tables in the restaurant, and she's the only one waiting the tables, and her mama's cooking. So she couldn't take the phone call right then. She told the guy, "Can you hold on for a minute while I run this food out?" And the guy got mad and hung up on her and wrote this bad review for her. And as she was telling me that, I said, "Connie, do you know the truth?" And she said, "Yes, I know the truth." And I said, "Do you know what happened?" She said, "Yes, I know what happened." I said, "What happened?" And she told me. And I said, "Now go type that. Mm-hmm. Go reply to that review and tell your side of that."
Yeah.
But if you don't want to do that, then who cares what that guy thought? Come find out he didn't live in Springdale. He lived, he was here on business. Mm-hmm. Why does his review matter? He's not going to be one of your normal patrons.
Yeah, we're not a tourist city.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't, we're not a destination city. Mm-hmm. And so, but Connie was so hung up on that one negative comment that it drug down all the positive comments that she had.
Yeah. That's what that'll do to people too.
And so that's what social media does, is you start living through somebody else's filter. Oh, I didn't get to go there on vacation. I didn't get to go snow skiing. I didn't get to go to the beach. I didn't get to go do this. I didn't get to go.
You don't see how much work,
absolutely.
how much birthdays, Christmases were missed so that person could do that.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
That was one thing I had to ask myself was like, if I want to be able to take my family on vacation, am I okay with the sacrifice that it's going to take to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the thing with social media is, it can be a good thing, but it can be a horrible thing. I would recommend doing, I don't spend a lot of time on it myself. Mm-hmm. In fact, I've deleted my Instagram account, my Twitter, X, whatever you call it now. I deleted that.
Those are the 2 that I just got on.
Yeah.
Well, I've been on Instagram, but X is.
And I have my Facebook account that I just reactivated it. And I have it because I'm trying to sell some equipment that my dad owned, and so I'm just trying to get rid of that. Once I get rid of that equipment on there, then I'll more than likely get rid of my Facebook, because what is it? It's a time sucker.
Yep.
I got back on TikTok. I'm probably getting ready to get rid of it because I told myself I wasn't going to look at it much, and I catch myself
looking at it.
And what is it? It's a time sucker.
And
it's something that could
TikTok's one of the worst ones because 3 minutes turns into 3 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
That,
there's some funny dudes on there. There's some funny people and there's some funny stuff, but there's also some clickbait on there. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden your algorithm changes and you're pulled into this world of looking at things you shouldn't be looking at. Facebook's the same thing. Instagram's the same thing. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon you're on to Google and you're Googling that person, and then all of a sudden you're sucked into a world where you don't need to be. And what good, at the end of the day, what good did it do you?
Mm-hmm. I have, so this is the last thing.
Yep.
I find the internet in general, social media, YouTube, anything on the internet to be very scary. Because whenever you go to a new website for the first time, this website uses cookies, to use this website you have to accept. I think it was Joe Rogan who explained this perfectly, and he said, the internet is provided to us for free by the government in exchange, so it's not for free, in exchange for your information. People don't realize how valuable their information can be. And the thing that scares me the most is information is a very plain word. You don't know where it stops.
Absolutely.
I know that Apple, they've been, I guess, going on some investigations about people at Apple listening in on people's phone calls.
You don't think for a second they're not listening right now?
Yeah, I mean, and
hopefully they hear Jesus in this.
Absolutely. There's Amazon Alexa. You know, I had one and I had to unplug it because, you know, I'm paranoid. But me and my dad would be talking about something. And this is the scariest part of it to me, is where, and you can't tell me this hasn't happened to you, I won't believe you, but where I'm talking with my dad about, I need a pair of Ariats. And then I'm scrolling through Facebook or whatever, and I see a pair of Ariats. And it was actually Elijah who I was talking to about that, and that ad happened. And like, I didn't look it up, I wasn't on my phone, I had my phone in my pocket, and I was having a conversation in real life. And it was, you know, the internet, which the scariest part of it all is the internet had access to my conversation because I gave them permission.
So I think it was yesterday, I looked up a bottle of bourbon, and or a brand of bourbon, and whenever I was doing something, I clicked on Facebook. 3 ads for that bottle, for that brand of bourbon were on my Facebook. It's all connected.
We're gonna wrap it up because it's almost 4 o'clock. The last thing I have is, what do you want anyone who's seen this to take away from this episode?
That you need Jesus. Not just, that's not a cliche. That's not a funny, that's not a funny thing. What other hope do you have in this world?
Absolutely.
Without Jesus.
I said that in this podcast, you know, I didn't have a hope until I found Jesus.
I fished with an old guy that he's in his 70s. He's a grumpy old man. Oh my gosh, he's so grumpy, so cantankerous. But he's such a sweet man. Such a good man. And when you spend a day with this man, you laugh your tail off. He's one of the funniest guys. But he's so grumpy. I think that's what makes me so funny, is because he's so grumpy. He's so grouchy. He's such a sweet man. But he was talking about somebody the other day that they're, or it's been a couple years ago, I'm sorry, that somebody passed away and they weren't, and their son was not saved.
You know how often I'll do that? Say, it was the other day and I was 6.
But he was making a statement. He said, I don't know how people survive without Jesus. And I was like, I don't know, Dave. I don't understand it either. And but that's what I want people to understand. You need Jesus, and you need him in your life. He's your daily. Is life going to be easy if you have Jesus? No. More than likely, it's going to be a little harder.
It's going to be harder. Yeah,
because you're going to have to. You've opened up a new battlefield when you said yes to Jesus. That's what I want people to know.
I got 2 things. Earlier you talked about you losing faith or running away from God.
Running away from.
Because you didn't want to be a preacher.
Yeah.
Keyword, right? Because you are not a pastor,
Right.
but you are a preacher. Because
everybody has that responsibility to be.
yes, and you don't.
I would say more a deliverer of the gospel instead of a preacher.
Well, I'm sticking to my word because you do preach. You've been preaching this entire episode. Like I told you, I need a quote book for you. You preach to all of us on Thursday nights. You know, you are the preacher in that group, and you preach to me every Monday morning.
Yeah.
And so that shows where, regardless of your will, God's will be done.
Oh yeah.
And
don't make God drop you to the bottom rung of the ladder.
mm-hmm.
Don't make him drop you down to bring you down. I mean, he's not a mean God. I understand that. He's not a God that puts his thumb on you.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a God that sees you and how cool is it that he doesn't need you, but he wants you.
Yeah, that's.
I've said that several times, but
that was one.
That's
thing
amazing to me. The God that said, "Ocean, you can only come this far. Mountain, you can only raise up this far. Mountain, you can only come out this far."
Mm-hmm.
Said, "I want you."
That yeah, that was one thing that I found super cool whenever I first got into faith.
Mm-hmm.
My other thing is I'm gonna do something different,
Okay.
and I'm not gonna ask for a subscription or a like. I'm going to ask for you to comment a prayer request, and I will share it with you,
Yep.
anyone that comments, and we will both separately pray over you.
Yep.
And with that, we're gonna end the episode.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right.
We're good.